Patrick Steffen's empty net miss. It's January 2007, late in the third period. The Dallas Stars are clinging to a 1-goal lead over the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers pull their goalie for the extra attacker. It's desperation time. The puck squirts free. Patrick Steffen pounces on it at center ice. He's in alone, no one in front of him. An empty net yawning. The crowd starts to groan in defeat. The announcers are already calling it over. He skates in slowly, casually, too casually. And then it happens. He loses control. He fumbles the puck. He trips. He falls flat on the ice. The puck just sits there behind him like a cruel joke. The Oilers can't believe it. They grab it immediately, rush up ice on a last-second breakout. Hemsky finishes it off with just seconds left to tie the game. Instead of sealing the win, Steffen's blunder gifts Edmonton life and forces overtime. It wasn't just a bad play. It was cartoonishly bad. It's the kind of blooper you expect from a beer league game, not the NHL. Even now, it feels like an outtake from a slapstick comedy. Dallas still managed to win in overtime. They survived it. They got the last laugh. But for Patrick Steffen, that miss is all anyone remembers. The own goal by Steve Smith. It's 1986, Game 7. The Calgary Flames versus the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers dynasty is in full swing. Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Yari Curry, Grant Fuhr in net. They're the heavy favorites. Back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. This is supposed to be their coronation, another step toward a three-peat. The building is rocking. Fans are ready to celebrate. But then, disaster strikes. It's the third period, tied 2-2. Steve Smith, just 23 years old, is behind his own net. It's his birthday. He tries to make a simple breakout pass up the middle, but instead, it goes horribly wrong. He fires the puck off the back of Grant Fuhr's leg. It ricochets straight into their own net. Silence. Shock. Smith collapses to the ice in disbelief. He can't even look up. Fuhr just stares. The crowd is frozen. That own goal stands as the series winner. Calgary advances. Edmonton is eliminated. The defending champs go home because of one accidental pass. It's one of the most painful, heartbreaking own goals in hockey history. Even now, it doesn't look real on replay. It feels like the kind of blunder you'd see in a video game glitch, except it happened on hockey's biggest stage. Steve Smith would go on to win more cups with Edmonton, but that moment would haunt him forever. The 2010 Stanley Cup overtime goal that nobody saw. June 9th, 2010. Game 6, Flyers versus Blackhawks. The cup is in the building. Chicago leads the series 3-2. One more win and they end a 49-year championship drought. It's overtime. Tension is off the charts. Every shot could be history. Patrick Kane picks up the puck along the left boards. He gains the zone, skates down the wing, and fires from a ridiculous angle near the bottom of the circle. And then, the puck just vanishes. There's no clear view of it going in, no roar from the crowd. Kane is the only one who knows. He throws his gloves in the air, screaming, sprinting down the ice in celebration. The goal light never goes on. The refs don't signal anything. The Flyers players stand around confused, wondering what just happened. The Blackhawks bench hesitates. Some jump over the boards. Others don't know if they're supposed to. Even the TV broadcasters have no idea. Replay finally shows the truth. The puck slipped just under the padding at the back of the net and got stuck, completely invisible to everyone but Kane. After a long review, the refs confirm it. Goal. Series over. The Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup in the most anticlimactic, surreal fashion imaginable. Fans in Philadelphia are left stunned. Chicago erupts into chaos. Even today, people still rewatch that clip and shake their heads. It's one of the weirdest, most confusing cup-winning goals ever scored. A moment so bizarre, it doesn't even look real on replay. Cody Eakin, 5-minute major. Game 7, 2019. Sharks versus Golden Knights. Everything is on the line. Winner advances. Loser goes home. Vegas is rolling. They're up 3-0 midway through the third period. The crowd is dead silent. It looks over. Then it happens. A routine face-off in the Sharks zone. Cody Eakin gives Joe Pavelski a shove, a cross-check right off the draw. Pavelski loses his balance, crashes awkwardly to the ice. His helmet pops off. He smacks his head, and blood starts pooling on the ice. It's ugly. He's dazed, not moving well. Trainers rush out. The building is tense. The refs huddle and decide it's a 5-minute major penalty. Vegas is stunned. A minor? Sure. But 5 minutes major? What? The Sharks go to work on the power play, and it turns into a nightmare for Vegas. San Jose scores once, twice, 3 times, 4. In under 5 minutes, they erase the entire deficit and take the lead. The arena goes insane. The bench is losing its mind. Vegas somehow forces overtime, shell-shocked. But they're spent. Then, Barclay Goodrow finishes it. Sharks win. A 3-0 Vegas lead in the third period of Game 7 evaporates in the most controversial power play in recent memory. Vegas fans are furious. Players are speechless. Replays later showed the call was generous at best. The NHL even admitted after the series it shouldn't have been a major, but the damage was done. Even now, it feels unreal. A single penalty turning an elimination game into one of the wildest, most debated comebacks in NHL playoff history. The in the crease rule that cost Buffalo the Cup, June 19, 1999. Stanley Cup Final, Game 6, Dallas Stars versus Buffalo Sabres. It's triple overtime, nearly 2 full extra periods of exhausted, desperate hockey. Players can barely stand. Every shift feels like it might be the last. The cup is literally in the building, waiting to be handed out. Then, it happens. Brett Hull picks up a rebound in front of Dominik Hasek. He plants his foot squarely in the blue paint of the crease. He takes another whack at the puck and scores. The goal horn sounds. Dallas players pour onto the ice. The Stars celebrate with the cup, but Buffalo players immediately protest. Hasek is screaming at the refs. Lindy Ruff is losing his mind behind the bench, because all season long, the NHL had enforced a black and white rule. No goal if any attacking player had even a toe in the crease before the puck. It didn't matter if it was accidental. Didn't matter if it didn't interfere with the goalie. They'd waved off goals all year for much less. Except not this time. The league said Hull had possession the whole time, so it was legal. Buffalo fans were furious. They felt robbed on the biggest stage possible. The NHL stuck by the call that night, but the controversy wouldn't go away. It overshadowed Dallas's cup win. The fallout was so big, the NHL actually changed the rule the very next season. Starting in 1999 to 2000, players could be in the crease as long as they didn't interfere with the goalie directly. A whole new approach because of one goal. To this day, Sabres fans still chant "no goal" when they see old highlights. Decades later, people still debate it. 1 foot in the crease, 1 Stanley Cup decided forever. Steve Sullivan taunting a fan, then getting hit in the face with the same puck. January 6, 2000. Saddle Dome in Calgary. Blackhawks versus Flames. Steve Sullivan is out there grinding, chirping, playing his usual feisty game. Then it happens. A clearing attempt deflects up and drills him right in the face. He drops immediately. Trainers rush out. There's blood on the ice. As Sullivan is skating off, holding a towel to his face, a fan leaning over the glass taunts him, laughing, pointing, shouting insults about him getting hurt. Sullivan doesn't forget. He gets stitched up in the locker room, bandaged, and, because this is hockey, he actually returns to finish the game. Then, the universe decides to write a perfect script. Later that same night, a Flames clearing attempt flips into the stands and nails that exact same fan in the face. He goes down, clutching his nose, blood everywhere. Sullivan immediately spots it, skates right over to the glass. He points at the fan, mimics the same mocking gestures, chirps him mercilessly, giving him exactly what he got earlier. Players on the ice see it and can't stop laughing. Even the linesmen are cracking smiles. It's so perfectly timed and petty that it feels like something straight out of a sitcom. One of those moments in hockey lore that's so unbelievable, it has to be true. The too many men penalty that doomed the Bruins. May 10th, 1979. Game 7 of the Stanley Cup semifinals. Bruins versus Canadiens at Boston Garden. It's one of hockey's greatest rivalries. 2 original 6 teams who hate each other. Montreal in the middle of a 4-year cup dynasty. Boston desperate to end it. Game 7 has been a war. The Garden is electric. The Bruins hold a 4-3 lead late in the third. Just over 2 minutes remain. Boston fans are on their feet, ready to celebrate dethroning the champs. Then, disaster. As Montreal regroups for one last push, the Bruins bench panics. Confusion erupts on a line change. Too many men on the ice. The refs catch it immediately. It's one of the worst possible penalties at the worst possible time. Montreal goes to the power play. Lafleur doesn't need another invitation. He glides over the blue line and wires a slap shot past Gilbert to tie it. The Garden goes silent. Overtime looms. Boston is shaken. Montreal smells blood. In OT, Yvon Lambert crashes the crease and buries the winner. Montreal wins Game 7. Boston's season dies on home ice. The Canadiens move on, finish their 4-year cup dynasty with another championship. And that penalty? It's gone down in NHL history as one of the dumbest, most costly mental errors ever. A single too many men call that didn't just cost a game. It changed the fate of 2 franchises and haunted Bruins fans for decades. The Alex Burrows Dragon Slayer goal, 2011. Canucks versus Blackhawks. Game 7. This was supposed to be Vancouver's year, President's Trophy winners. Best team in the league. They jumped out to a 3-0 series lead over the defending champion Blackhawks. Everyone thought it was over. But then, Chicago roared back, won 3 straight, forced a winner-take-all Game 7 in Vancouver. The pressure was suffocating. The building was electric but anxious. The game is tied 1-1 after regulation. Overtime. Sudden death. One goal decides everything. Burrows had already gone from hero to potential GOAT. Early in overtime, he took a penalty, a hooking call that made every Canucks fan hold their breath. The penalty kill survived. The tension only got worse. Then it happened. A clearing attempt from Chris Campoli of Chicago. Burrows reads it perfectly, jumps up, knocks it down with his glove. He controls it, skates in alone. The entire city holds its breath. He rips it past Corey Crawford. Game over. Series over. The building explodes in chaos. Fans are screaming. Teammates mob him. They called it the Dragon Slayer goal because Chicago was the monster they couldn't kill for years. The team that had knocked them out in back-to-back playoffs. Ending Chicago's dynasty run felt like something out of a Hollywood script. And it wasn't just about beating their rivals. Burrows' goal propelled Vancouver into the Western Conference semifinals, keeping their dream alive. They'd go on to reach the Stanley Cup final that year, and for Canucks fans, this goal is remembered as the turning point of the entire 2011 run. Even now, it's replayed every spring in Vancouver as the ultimate Game 7 highlight. The Maple Leafs 4-1 collapse, 2013, first round, Leafs vs. Bruins, Game 7. It's been nearly a decade since the Maple Leafs last won a playoff series. The city is starved, hopes are sky high, and it's all coming together. Game 7 in Boston. Toronto storms out to a 4-1 lead-out with just over 10 minutes left in the third period. Fans back home are in the streets. Bars are going wild. Social media is flooded with celebrations. They're already planning the second round. But then, disaster strikes. Nathan Horton scores to make it 4-2. Not a big deal, right? Just one. But Boston smells blood. A relentless forecheck. The crowd roaring. Toronto wilting. Lucic bangs in another one, 4-3. Panic sets in. The Leafs are frozen. Seconds later, with the goalie pulled, Patrice Bergeron rips home the tying goal, 4-4. Bars all over Toronto go silent. Fans on the couch bury their heads in their hands. They can't believe it. And now, it's overtime. You can feel the dread. Everyone knows how this is going to end. Bergeron again. A scramble in front. He finds the puck. Fires it home. Game over. Series over. Toronto is eliminated in one of the worst collapses in NHL history. A 4-1 lead with 10 minutes left. It's gone in an instant. Boston celebrates. Toronto melts down. Even now, Leafs fans can't watch it without shaking their heads. It's not just a loss. It's a permanent scar on the franchise. The meltdown that defined a generation of heartbreak. The hand pass goal. 2019 Western Conference Final. Sharks vs. Blues. It's Game 3. The series is tied 1-1. Every shift matters. Every bounce could decide who goes to the Stanley Cup Final. Regulation ends deadlocked. Now it's sudden death overtime. The tension is unbearable. Then chaos in front of the Blues net. The puck bounces around in the crease. Sticks and skates everywhere. Timo Meier is falling forward. He clearly bats the puck with his hand. An obvious hand pass. It lands perfectly on Erik Karlsson's stick. Karlsson wastes no time. He buries it. Game over. Sharks win. But the Blues players are furious. They're screaming at the refs, pointing to the ice, yelling hand pass over and over. The officials huddle. The building holds its breath. But there's nothing they can do, because at that time, hand passes weren't reviewable. They missed it live, and they couldn't go back and fix it. The goal stands. Sharks celebrate. Fans lose their minds. Meanwhile, the Blues leave the ice in stunned silence. Their coach berates the officials. It's one of the most blatant blown calls in playoff history. So bad that the NHL actually admitted afterward they got it wrong. The outrage was so intense, it forced the league to change the rules the very next season. Hand passes leading to goals became reviewable. But for St. Louis that night, it was too late. A moment so controversial, it's still replayed as the textbook example of why video review exists. The forward pass, 1929. Before 1929, hockey was basically rugby on ice. You literally couldn't pass the puck forward in the offensive zone. It was all dump, chase, grind, and hope. Offense was slow and cluttered. Scoring was painfully low. Fans were getting bored. The league knew it had to evolve, so they changed everything. Forward passing in the offensive zone was finally allowed. Suddenly, plays could develop. Wingers could streak to the net. Centers could make cross-ice feeds. The entire sport opened up. Scoring didn't just rise, it doubled almost overnight. Teams had to rethink defense. Coaches had to design new systems, and stars finally had a room to shine. Imagine telling Connor McDavid or Nathan MacKinnon they'd have to lug the puck end to end every single shift. No breakout passes, no stretch plays, just grind. They'd lose their minds. This rule didn't just boost goals, it created modern hockey. The red line, 1943. In 1943, the NHL added the center ice red line, not just for looks, but to solve a problem. The game was getting bogged down in the neutral zone. Before this, passing rules were ultra restrictive. You couldn't pass the puck forward over your own blue line at all, which forced teams to skate it out slowly and grind for every inch. Neutral zone scrums were constant. By introducing the red line, the league allowed teams to make a forward pass from their defensive zone up to the red line, and then across the next blue line, loosening the old no forward pass restrictions, just enough to speed things up. It didn't permit true two-line passes. Those remained offside until 2005-06, but it created a transitional neutral zone and opened space for faster breakouts. Stretch passes got longer, rushes became more dynamic. It forced defenses to back off and respect the threat of a long pass, making the game less of a slog and more of a race. This rule didn't just change passing, it changed strategy. It laid the groundwork for the flowing end-to-end hockey we love today. Goalie masks, 1959. Jacques Plante, absolute legend. In 1959, he took a puck straight to the face, needed stitches, and then did something that changed hockey forever. He put on a mask and went back in. Before that, goalies played barefaced. Imagine standing in front of slap shots with nothing but your courage and a wool sweater for protection. It was insanity, and seen as toughness. Coaches hated the idea of masks at first, thinking they'd block vision or make goalies soft. But Plante didn't care. He wasn't about to get his nose broken every night for tradition's sake. What started as one goalie's personal stand turned into a revolution. Other goalies followed. Designs evolved from crude fiberglass molds to the iconic painted cages we see today. Now, mandatory. No questions. From beer leagues to the NHL, no one steps into the crease without a mask. It's not just equipment, it's a symbol of the position, a badge of bravery, and all thanks to one stubborn, stitched-up legend who refused to take no for an answer. Goalie equipment size rules, 2000s. By the early 2000s, goalies were turning into full-on Michelin men. Their pads weren't just protective. They were weapons designed to take away every inch of net. Chest protectors looked like body armor from a sci-fi movie. Blockers were massive. Leg pads ballooned. Even average goalies could just play big and smother shots by being an unholy wall of foam and plastic. Fans complained. Players complained. Scoring was way down, and highlight reel goals were getting rarer. The league had to act. So the NHL cracked down hard. They introduced strict new size limits for pads, gloves, blockers, and chest protectors. Goalies now had to prove they were athletic and technical, not just well-padded statues. The result? More goals, more rebounds, more scrambles, and way fewer puffy Michelin memes. It wasn't about punishing goalies. It was about restoring balance, giving shooters a fighting chance, bringing back excitement, and making sure fans got to see what they came for. Skill, drama, and the puck in the net. The shootout, 2005. Before 2005, NHL games could end in a tie. Yep, 60 minutes plus a 5-minute overtime, and if no one scored, both teams shook hands and split the points. Fans trudged home with an anticlimactic, well, that's that. Coming out of the 2004-5 lockout, the NHL was desperate to win fans back. They needed flash, drama, a reason to tune in until the very last second. Nobody wanted to pay for a ticket and see TIE on the scoreboard, enter the shootout. Instead of letting games end in a draw, teams picked their 3 best shooters to go one-on-one with the goalie. The crowd would roar with every deke, every save, every filthy move. It was part skill, part theater, pure edge-of-your-seat entertainment. Casual fans loved it instantly. It made for killer highlight reels, buzzer-beater TV moments, and guaranteed a winner every night. Jerseys sold. Ratings went up, but purists, they hated it. They called it a skills competition, deciding real games. They missed the battle of 5-on-5 or 4-on-4 overtime. Some said it was unfair for goalies. Others said it cheapened the sport's integrity. Still, despite the complaints, it stuck around. Because for better or worse, the shootout gave hockey exactly what it needed in 2005. Excitement, certainty, and a guaranteed finish that left no one going home saying, guess it's a tie. The 2-line pass rule removed. 2005. For decades, the center red line wasn't just a stripe on the ice, it was a barrier. If you passed the puck over both the defensive blue line and the red line in one go, whistle, offside. It was designed to keep the game structured, slow down cherry picking, and limit long bombs. But by the early 2000s, hockey had a problem. The dead puck era. Clutch and grab defense, neutral zone traps, and teams clogging the ice like molasses. Scoring was at historic lows. Games felt suffocating. Fans wanted speed. excitement, actual goals. So in 2005, coming out of the lockout, the NHL made a seismic change. They scrapped the two-line pass rule. Suddenly that red line didn't matter for offside calls. Players could fire stretch passes from their own zone to attackers already flying through the neutral zone. The result? Speed exploded. Defenses couldn't just sit back and clog lanes. Forwards started timing breakaways like wide receivers going deep. Goalie duels got more dramatic. It was a nightmare for slow-footed defensemen and a gift for playmakers. It didn't just make the game faster, it transformed it. Modern hockey, end-to-end rushes, insane transitions, highlight reel goals was born from that one change. And while purists grumbled, fans cheered, because when the red line lost its power, the game truly opened up. Fighting rule changes, 2010s. By the 2010s, the NHL realized fighting needed to change. For decades, you'd see stage fights right off the face-off. Two enforcers dropping gloves for no real reason except to send a message. The league wanted to get rid of that scripted nonsense. Enter the instigator penalty. Now, if you jump someone who doesn't want to fight, you pay for it with an extra 2 minutes. It discouraged goon tactics and made players think twice before trying to start something just to get the crowd going. Then came the helmet rules. You can't just whip your helmet off anymore. Take it off before the fight, that's a penalty. The idea was to cut down on head injuries and make things a bit safer, if you can call fighting safe at all. And let's not forget the linesmen. They don't just stand by anymore. They're quick to step in and break things up if it gets ugly. Fighting's not gone, far from it. You'll still see scrums, gloves dropping, and rivals settling scores. But now it's policed, literally and figuratively. The NHL didn't ban fighting. They managed it, trying to strike a balance between hockey's raw emotion and the modern need for safety. Concussion spotters, 2016. By 2016, the NHL finally admitted what everyone already knew. Concussions were a serious problem. Players were getting rocked, staggering to the bench, and being sent right back out there like nothing happened. The old school mentality was, getting your bell rung just meant you were tough. Shake it off, kid. But science caught up. Long-term effects like CTE and post-concussion syndrome made headlines. Former players spoke out about memory loss, depression, even suicide. The league had to act, so they introduced mandatory concussion spotters. Now, trained officials watch games, both in the arena and remotely, looking for signs of head injury. If a player shows symptoms, stumbling, glassy eyes, disorientation, the spotter can pull them immediately for evaluation. No arguments, no coach's call. Critics say it's not enough. Some claim teams still game the system, or that evaluations can be rushed. But it's a hell of a lot better than the 90s, when smelling salts on the bench were considered treatment, and returning to the ice dazed was seen as being a warrior. It's not perfect, but it's progress. And in a sport where hits are brutal and careers can be short, protecting players' brains is a change that was long overdue. 3-on-3 overtime, 2015. By 2015, the NHL had a problem: too many shootouts. Games felt like they were being settled by coin flips instead of hockey. Fans wanted real, skill-based endings. So the league brainstormed, how do you guarantee open ice, big moments, and fewer games ending in a glorified skills competition? Enter 3-on-3 overtime instead of 4-on-4 or full strength. Teams went down to 3 skaters aside for 5 minutes. The result? Absolute chaos. Suddenly the rink felt huge. Speedsters like McDavid and McKinnon could take one stride and have a breakaway. Defense turned into survival. Goalie duels got insane. Players had to be creative, responsible, and fast all at once. Games ended with highlight reel goals. No need for the dreaded shootout. Fans ate it up. Arena crowds roared for end-to-end rushes and 2-on-1s every shift. TV producers loved it too. Easy drama, built-in excitement. Coaches? Oh, they hate it. It's unpredictable. It exposes mistakes brutally, and systems go out the window. Line changes are risky. Possession is everything. One slip and it's game over. But that's the beauty of it. 3-on-3 overtime didn't just reduce shootouts. It gave hockey back its wild creative side. It's pond hockey at NHL speed, and it's one of the best rule changes the league's ever made. Hand pass rule clarifications. The infamous San Jose hand pass goal in 2019. Western Conference Final. Sharks versus Blues, overtime. Chaos in front of the net. Timo Meier clearly bats the puck with his hand to a teammate, who buries it for the OT winner. No whistle, no review. Goal stands. Blues fans lost their minds. Hockey fans everywhere watched the replay and just laughed, or raged. It was obvious. Even the league admitted it after, but the rules at the time didn't allow video review of hand passes on goals. The backlash was huge. It wasn't just a blown call. It potentially changed a series. The NHL had to do damage control, so they updated the rulebook, clarifying once and for all. You cannot score a goal that directly results from a hand pass, period. And now they can review it. But here's the thing. Fans, especially in St. Louis, still haven't forgiven it. You'll see references to the hand pass on signs, on Twitter memes, on t-shirts. It's one of those moments that lives in infamy. The rule change fixed the loophole, but it didn't erase the salt. And in hockey, that's how rivalries and grudges stay alive. NHL, North America. The National Hockey League, or NHL, is the top professional hockey league in the world, and by far the most famous. Founded in 1917 with just 4 Canadian teams, it's now a 32-team league split between the United States and Canada. Each team plays 82 games from October to April, facing each opponent multiple times in a grueling schedule. The league is divided into Eastern and Western conferences, with further divisions inside each. The Stanley Cup playoffs are the crown jewel. 16 teams qualify, 8 from each conference, and battle through 4 best-of-7 rounds. The Cup is one of the hardest trophies to win in all of sports, requiring 16 playoff wins after an already exhausting season. Historic franchises like the Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Detroit Red Wings have deep roots, while modern dynasties like the LA Kings, 2010s, and Tampa Bay Lightning, 2020s, have dominated in recent years. The NHL is also home to the world's best talent. From legends like Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux to current stars like Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon, the NHL's playing style is a mix of speed, skill, and physicality, with smaller North American rinks creating more contact and faster decision-making than most leagues abroad. In terms of salaries, the NHL operates under a salary cap system. As of the 2024 to 2025 season, the minimum salary for a player is $775,000 US per year, while the maximum a single player can earn is tied to 20% of the team's cap, roughly $16.3 million. Most established players earn $2 to $7 million annually, while entry-level contracts for rookies typically pay $900,000 plus performance bonuses. KHL, Russia and Eurasia. The Continental Hockey League, or KHL, is widely regarded as the second best hockey league in the world. Founded in 2008, it brought together the top teams from Russia and other nations in Eurasia into a single elite competition. While headquartered in Moscow, the league has included clubs from Belarus, Kazakhstan, Latvia, and even China, making it a truly international championship. In Russia, hockey isn't just popular, it's the #1 sport. The KHL is followed passionately across the country, with arenas regularly selling out and games broadcast nationwide. The league currently features 23 teams split into 2 conferences, playing a 68-game regular season from September to February. The playoffs culminate in the awarding of the Gagarin Cup, one of hockey's most prestigious trophies outside North America. Powerhouses like CSKA Moscow and AK Bars Kazan have all had dominant runs, fueling some of the fiercest rivalries in the sport. The KHL is known for its combination of high-end skill and tactical structure, played on larger European ice surfaces that allow for more open passing and longer offensive setups compared to the smaller, more physical NHL rinks. Many Russian-born NHL stars started in the KHL, while others returned later in their careers for lucrative contracts and the chance to play closer to home. Also, many North American NHL 3rd and 4th line players went to Russia for more ice time and higher pay. For the salaries in the KHL, exact salary figures are often not fully transparent, and the payment structures can be unconventional. While official contracts for top Russian stars are said to be worth $1.5 to $5 million, and proven veterans between $500,000 to $1 million, the true earnings are harder to pin down. Industry rumors claim that in some cases, really large bonuses, as in even portions of player salaries, are quietly paid by private backers connected to powerful business networks, sometimes alleged to have ties to organized crime. These arrangements, while unconfirmed, have long fueled the KHL's reputation for being both highly lucrative and somewhat mysterious for players. SHL, Sweden. The Swedish Hockey League, or SHL, is the highest level of hockey in Sweden and one of the most respected leagues in Europe. Established in 1975, it features 14 teams, each playing 52 regular season games from September to March. The top 10 teams qualify for the playoffs, with the Lamat Trophy awarded to the champion. Hockey is deeply woven into Swedish culture, with strong youth development programs and national pride tied to the sport. The SHL has produced countless NHL stars, including Nicklas Lidström, Henrik Zetterberg and Victor Hedman. It has also welcomed NHL veterans returning home to finish their careers, such as Frederick Modin, a Stanley Cup champion with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Frölunda HC, Farjestad BK, and Djurgårdens IF are among the most successful clubs, boasting passionate fan bases and long histories. The SHL style is less physical than the NHL's, but highly skilled, with players excelling in puck possession and defensive positioning. Many top prospects develop here before making the leap to North America. For the salaries, the SHL operates on a smaller budget than the NHL or KHL. Star players may earn $400,000 to $500,000 US, while most established veterans make $100,000 to $250,000 US. Young players or those on entry-level deals often earn $40,000 to $70,000 US, with additional bonuses for playoff success. In many cases, teams also cover major living expenses, including rent, food, and even a car, which significantly boosts the overall value of a player's compensation package. National League, Switzerland. The National League is Switzerland's top-tier hockey competition and one of Europe's best-paying leagues. It features 14 teams, each playing 52 games from September to March, followed by intense playoffs that crown the Swiss champion. Hockey is extremely popular in Switzerland, with average attendances among the highest in Europe. Fans pack arenas in cities like Bern, Zurich, and Zug, creating an atmosphere that rivals bigger leagues. Clubs like SC Bern, ZSC Lions, and EV Zug have dominated domestically and are known for their passionate support and modern facilities. The league blends speed, skill, and offense, often producing high-scoring, entertaining games. Thanks to competitive salaries, a high quality of life, and scenic cities, Switzerland has become a favorite destination for former NHL stars winding down their careers. Notable examples include Joe Thornton, Patrick Kane, Austin Matthews during the 2015 lockout season before joining the NHL, Mark Streit, Roman Josi, who started here before going to the NHL, and Daniel Briere. Many imports use the league as a final chapter in their playing career, while enjoying a more relaxed schedule and lifestyle. For the salaries, the National League is unmatched in Europe for pay. Star imports can earn $500,000 to $1 million. Established domestic players make $200,000 to $400,000, and lower-tier players earn $80,000 to $120,000. With low taxes in certain cantons, take-home pay can rival mid-tier NHL contracts. Also, like in the majority of top-tier hockey leagues, basic living expenses are covered, such as rent, car, and food. Liga, Finland. Liga is Finland's top professional hockey league, founded in 1975. It features 15 teams, each playing 60 regular season games from September to March. The top 10 teams advance to the playoffs, with the winner lifting the Canada Malja, one of the most coveted trophies in European hockey. In Finland, hockey isn't just a sport, it's a national obsession. Rinks are packed during the winter months, the World Championships stop the country in its tracks, and Liga games are a weekly ritual for countless fans. Finnish hockey is renowned for producing elite goaltenders, smooth skating defensemen, and disciplined two-way forwards. Clubs like Tappara, Kärpät, and HIFK have dominated the domestic scene and served as stepping stones for players like Timo Selänne, Mikko Rantanen, and Alexander Barkov. The league's style emphasizes skating, teamwork, and defensive structure, often serving as a bridge between junior hockey and the NHL. For the salaries, Liga salaries are modest compared to top-paying leagues. Star players can earn $200,000 to $350,000. Established veterans typically make $80,000 to $150,000, and younger players often earn $30,000 to $50,000. In many cases, teams also cover rent, provide meals, and even supply a car, which greatly offsets the lower base salaries. Czech Extraliga, Czechia. The Czech Extraliga is the highest level of hockey in Czechia, and one of Europe's most technically skilled leagues. Founded in 1993 following the split of Czechoslovakia, it has 14 teams playing 52 regular season games from September to March. The playoffs are fiercely contested, with the league champion lifting the Masaryk Cup, a trophy with roots dating back to the 1930s. Czech hockey emphasizes quick passing, puck control, and high hockey IQ. Many players who go on to NHL careers, like Jágr, David Pastrnak, and Tomáš Hertl, developed their skills here. Top clubs include HC Sparta Praha, HC Kometa Brno, and HC Oceloti Třinec, all backed by passionate local fan bases. While the league doesn't have the same financial resources as Switzerland or the KHL, It's highly respected as a breeding ground for world-class talent. Salaries. Star players in the Extraliga can earn $150,000 to $300,000. Established veterans usually make $80,000 to $150,000, and younger or depth players earn $40,000 to $70,000. Many players supplement their income with international tournament bonuses and off-season contracts abroad. Rent, transportation, and food are also covered in most cases. DL, Germany. The Deutsche Eishockey Liga, or DIL, is Germany's top professional hockey league and has grown rapidly in quality and popularity over the past 2 decades. Founded in 1994, it features 15 teams playing 52 games from September to March. The season concludes with a playoff race for the German championship, which has been won by dominant clubs like Eisbären Berlin, Adler Mannheim, and Red Bull Munich. The DEL combines a North American-style physical game with the skill and tactics of European hockey. The league has attracted more North American imports in recent years, raising its overall competitiveness. German hockey's profile has also skyrocketed thanks to NHL stars like Leon Draisaitl, who played junior hockey domestically before heading to North America. While hockey is well loved by its fan base, it's not Germany's main sport. Soccer dominates the national sports scene. Still, DL arenas are known for having some of the best atmospheres in Europe. Many teams share facilities with major soccer clubs, and supporters bring the same passion and energy to hockey games, complete with organized chants, drums, flags, and standing sections. The result is an electric ambiance that can make even regular season games feel like playoff battles. Salaries. The DL offers competitive pay within Europe. Star imports can make $200,000 to $400,000, while most veterans earn $80,000 to $150,000. Younger players or those on depth roles often make $40,000 to $50,000. In many cases, teams also cover housing, provide meals or meal stipends, and supply a team car, which can significantly increase the real value of a player's contract. ICEHL, Austria and Central Europe. The IC Hockey League is Austria's premier professional league, but it's truly an international competition. Alongside Austrian teams, the league includes clubs from Italy, Slovenia, Hungary, and occasionally other Central European countries. The season runs from September to March, followed by playoffs that crown the league champion, with EC Red Bull Salzburg often a dominant force. The ICHL plays an open, offensive style that appeals to fans and often leads to high-scoring games. And the fans here, they're absolutely crazy about their teams. Home arenas are loud, colorful, and filled with chants, drums, and flags, creating an atmosphere that can rival much bigger leagues. Even in smaller markets, supporters bring an intensity that makes games feel like major events. Salaries. Top players can earn $150,000 to $250,000, while most make $50,000 to $100,000. Younger players, or those in depth roles, typically earn $30,000 to $50,000. In many cases, teams also provide rent-free housing, meal allowances, and a car, making it easier for imports to settle in and significantly increasing the real value of the contract. The Magnus League, France. The Magnus League is France's top professional hockey league and one of the oldest still in operation, founded in 1906. It features 12 teams competing from September to March, with each club playing 44 regular season games before the top 8 advance to the playoffs. The champion lifts the Magnus Cup, a trophy steeped in over a century of history. While hockey is not France's #1 sport, that title belongs to soccer. It has a loyal and passionate following in certain regions, and the fans here, they can be absolutely crazy about their clubs. In cities like Grenoble, Rouen, and Amiens, arenas are loud and electric on game nights, with chants, drums, and flags turning the stands into a wall of sound. Rivalries can get heated, and playoff games often feel like full-blown festivals. French hockey blends European finesse and speed, influenced heavily by the larger ice surfaces and the international mix of players. Clubs like Brûleurs de Loup, Dragons de Rouen, and Gothic d'Amiens have dominated in recent decades and are known for their devoted supporters. Salaries. Star imports may earn $80,000 to $150,000. Established domestic players often make $40,000 to $70,000 per year, and younger players typically earn $20,000 to $40,000 per year. In most cases, teams also cover rent, provide meals or meal stipends, and often include a car, making the total package much more appealing, despite the lower base salaries. It's not uncommon that some players have a second job to support their family. Typos Extraliga, Slovakia. The Typos Extraliga is Slovakia's top professional hockey league. and one of the most passionate hockey competitions in Central Europe. Founded in 1993 after the split of Czechoslovakia, it has built a reputation as a proud, gritty league that consistently produces high-end talent. The season runs from September to March, with 12 teams competing in the regular season, before battling it out in the playoffs for the Slovakia Championship trophy. Hockey in Slovakia is hugely popular, second only to soccer, and the atmosphere at games can be intense. Fans pack arenas in cities like Košice, Volan, and Bratislava, creating a wall of noise with chants, drums, and even air horns. Rivalries, especially between HC Košice and Slovan Bratislava, are fierce, and playoff games often sell out well in advance. The league is known for its mix of homegrown Slovak players and foreign imports, often from the Czech Republic, North America, and Scandinavia. While budgets are smaller than in leagues like the SHL or National League, Slovakia has a strong hockey tradition, producing NHL legends like Zdeno Chara, Marian Hossa, and Peter Bondra. Salaries. Pay in the Tipos Extraliga is modest compared to Europe's wealthiest leagues. Star imports may earn $60,000 per year. Established domestic players often make $30,000 to $60,000 per year, and younger players typically earn $15,000 to $30,000. In most cases, teams also cover housing, provide meals or meal stipends, and supply a car, making the total package more appealing despite the lower salaries. The Fjordkraft League, Norway. The Fjordkraft League is Norway's top professional hockey league and the pinnacle of the country's fast-growing hockey scene. Founded in 1934, it features 10 teams playing from September to March, followed by playoffs to crown the Norwegian champion. The league has steadily improved over the past 2 decades, with better facilities, stronger youth programs, and an increasing number of imports raising the competitive level. Hockey in Norway is popular in certain regions, especially around Oslo and in smaller hockey towns like Stavanger and Sarpsborg. While soccer remains the national sport, hockey fans here are fiercely loyal and create an electric atmosphere on game nights. Clubs like Vålerenga Isake, Stavanger Oilers, and Storhamar Hockey have big, passionate followings, and their games often feel like community-wide events. The league style is a mix of European finesse and physical play, with an emphasis on speed and strong team structure. Norway has also produced notable NHL players, including Mats Zuccarello, who began his professional career in the Fjordkraft Ligaen before heading to the SHL and then the NHL. Salaries. Pay in the Fjordkraft Ligaen is modest compared to top European leagues. Star imports can earn $60,000 to $100,000 per year. Established domestic players often make $30,000 to $60,000 per year, and younger players typically earn $15,000 to $30,000. In most cases, teams cover all the basic needs. To conclude, while we've covered many of the top leagues here, there are still a few more worth mentioning, from the British EIHL to the Asia League in Japan and South Korea, to smaller but dedicated competitions in Poland, Latvia, and beyond. But they are less well paid than the one I showed you. Every league has its own identity, traditions, and fan culture, making the game unique no matter where it's played. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new about the world's top hockey leagues, leave a like, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into the world of hockey. Mike Ribeiro. Mike Ribeiro was once one of the NHL's most gifted passers. A slick center with elite vision, he posted 793 points in 1,074 games, peaking with an 83-point season for Dallas in 2007-08. He earned an All-Star nod, dazzled fans with highlight reel assists, and played pivotal top 6 roles for the Canadiens, Stars, Capitals, and Coyotes. On the ice, he was all finesse. Off the ice, his story became a spiral of allegations and controversy. In 2014, a former family nanny filed a civil lawsuit accusing Ribeiro of sexual assault during his time in Texas. The case was settled out of court in 2015, but the public stain never left his name. Ribeiro denied the allegations, yet the headlines were enough to shift attention from his play to his personal life. Then came his battle with alcohol and substance abuse. By 2017, the Nashville Predators placed Ribeiro on waivers for the purpose of buyout after repeated off-ice issues and reports of missed practices. Later that year, he admitted publicly that he was struggling with addiction, telling ESPN that his substance abuse had wrecked his career and his life. Offers from NHL teams dried up almost instantly. Post-retirement, Ribeiro's troubles compounded. Financial strain, personal turmoil, and the lingering shadow of that lawsuit left him adrift. Once known as a power play quarterback, he was now discussed in the same breath as cautionary tales of wasted talent. Mike Ribeiro's career arc is a sobering one. from all-star status and $50 million in career earnings to a reputation mired in scandal and personal demons. His vision on the ice could set up anyone for a goal. His vision off the ice tragically set himself up for collapse. Evander Kane. Evander Kane broke into the NHL in 2009 as a 4th overall pick of the Atlanta Thrashers, a power forward with speed, skill, and a scoring touch. Over the years with Atlanta, Winnipeg, Buffalo, and San Jose, he racked up over 30 goals twice and earned more than $55 million in career contracts. On the ice, he played with swagger. Off it, that confidence often bled into headlines for the wrong reasons. His first controversies were locker room rumors, flaunting stacks of cash on social media, a reported fight with teammates, and accusations of immaturity. But by the late 2010s, Kane's problems were much bigger than bad optics. In 2016, he faced harassment charges in Buffalo after an alleged incident at a bar. Those charges were later dropped after he completed anger management. In 2021, things exploded. Kane filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, listing $26.8 million in debt, despite still being under a $49 million contract. Court documents revealed massive gambling losses, including millions in markers from Las Vegas casinos. His estranged wife publicly accused him of betting on his own NHL games, prompting a league investigation. The NHL found no evidence of game fixing, but the scandal damaged his reputation. Kane also faced multiple civil suits from lenders, casinos, and even a woman who accused him of sexual assault, a case later dropped. Meanwhile, the San Jose Sharks terminated his contract in early 2022 for violating COVID protocols, leading to another grievance battle. He found on-ice redemption with the Edmonton Oilers, returning to playoff form, but the chaos off the ice left deep scars. Kane's story is one of extremes: top-line talent, bottom-line financial ruin, and a career constantly balancing between comeback and collapse. Slava Voinov. Voinov was living the dream. Drafted by the Los Angeles Kings in 2008, the Russian defenseman became a key piece of their blue line, helping the team win 2 Stanley Cups in 2012 and 2014. At just 24 years old, he had a lucrative contract, international recognition, and a secure spot on one of the NHL's top teams. Then, in October 2014, everything unraveled. Police were called to a Los Angeles area hospital after Voinov's wife arrived with visible injuries. Investigators alleged Voinov had struck, choked, and pushed her into a television during an argument in their home. He was arrested and charged with corporal injury to a spouse, a felony under California law. The NHL immediately suspended him indefinitely. Voinov initially pleaded not guilty, but in July 2015, he accepted a plea deal, pleading no contest to a misdemeanor charge of corporal injury to a spouse. He was sentenced to 90 days in jail, probation, and community service. The consequences extended beyond the courtroom. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security began deportation proceedings, and Voinov voluntarily left the United States in September 2015. The Kings terminated his contract shortly after. In Russia, Voinov resumed his career in the KHL and even won Olympic gold with the Olympic athletes from Russia team in 2018. However, attempts to return to the NHL in 2019 were met with backlash from fans, media, and teams, ultimately killing any comeback. Voinov's case remains one of the most infamous examples of a player's career imploding due to domestic violence. Once celebrated for clutch playoff performances, his name is now a permanent entry in discussions about the NHL's handling of criminal conduct and the stark line between on-ice hero and off-ice disgrace. Patrick Cote. He was a towering enforcer drafted 37th overall by the Dallas Stars in 1995. Although he barely cracked the NHL, only 8 games with Dallas and 6 with Edmonton, he made his mark in Nashville, racking up a whopping 313 penalty minutes in just 91 games. That total still stands as the Predators' single-season record for PIMs. Cote earned a reputation as a bona fide tough guy, dropping the gloves 41 times and amassing 50 total fights across his NHL career. But his aggression didn't stay on the ice. In 2002, during a routine border stop in Malone, New York, authorities found 30 pounds of marijuana hidden in his vehicle. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge. What started as smuggling escalated into full-blown criminal behavior. In 2014, Cote was sentenced to 30 months in prison after admitting to robbing 2 banks in the suburbs of Montreal. He'd made roughly $1.5 million during his pro career, yet his post-hockey life went from fights to felonies, a dizzying fall from athlete to armed robber. In that dramatic turn, Cote's legacy shifted from penalty minute record holder to cautionary tale, a skilled enforcer whose choices off the ice overshadowed anything he did on it. Danny Heatley. Heatley entered the NHL as a phenom, drafted 2nd overall in 2000 by the Atlanta Thrashers. He wasted no time making an impact. winning the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year in 2002 and putting up back-to-back 80-plus point seasons. With blazing speed, a lethal shot, and a knack for clutch goals, Heatley was one of the league's brightest young stars. Then in September 2003, everything changed. Driving his Ferrari on a residential road in Atlanta, Heatley lost control at high speed. The car slammed into a brick pillar and iron fence, splitting in half. His passenger and close friend teammate Dan Snyder was thrown from the vehicle and suffered severe head injuries. Snyder died 6 days later. Heatley was charged with vehicular homicide, reckless driving, and speeding. In 2005, he pleaded guilty to 4 charges, including second-degree vehicular homicide, and was sentenced to 3 years probation, avoiding jail time. The tragedy forever altered his reputation. While Snyder's family publicly forgave him, fans and media never looked at Heatley the same way. He was traded to Ottawa, where he rebuilt his career, recording back-to-back 50-goal seasons and playing in the Stanley Cup final. But behind the numbers, Heatley's image was still shadowed by that night in Atlanta. Later disputes with management in Ottawa and San Jose led to a nomadic final stretch of his career. By the time he retired, Heatley had 372 goals, 2 Olympic medals, and a resume most players would envy, but also a permanent asterisk. His name sits in a strange place in hockey history, an elite scorer whose career was derailed not by injury or age, but by one catastrophic decision off the ice. Theo Renfleury, at just 5'6", Theo Renfleury defied every doubt to become one of the NHL's most dynamic forwards. A 7th-round pick in 1987, he played with relentless energy, scoring over 1,000 points, winning a Stanley Cup in 1989 with Calgary, and representing Canada on the Olympic stage. Fleury was the ultimate underdog success story until his post-career life exposed the darkness behind the triumphs. In his 2009 autobiography, Playing with Fire, Fleury revealed he had been sexually abused by junior coach Graham James, the same coach later convicted in multiple abuse cases. The trauma, he said, fueled decades of self-destructive behavior. During his playing days, Fleury descended into alcoholism, cocaine addiction, and gambling, sometimes showing up to games under the influence. In 2002, after failing a drug test, he was banned from the NHL. Retirement didn't immediately slow the spiral. Fleury admitted to blowing through tens of millions in career earnings, losing it to drugs, gambling, and failed business ventures. At one point, he contemplated suicide, saying he put a loaded gun in his mouth before deciding against it. His 2009 book and public speaking tour transformed him into an advocate for abuse survivors, but controversy still found him. In later years, Fleury made headlines for polarizing political statements and conspiracy theories, causing friction with fans who once adored him. Today, Fleury's legacy is complicated. He's both a symbol of resilience for speaking out against abuse and a cautionary tale of how unresolved trauma can consume even the strongest competitors. His career numbers belong in the Hall of Fame conversation, but so do the stories of addiction, self-sabotage, and a fight for redemption that still isn't over. Mike Danton was never a star. A gritty fourth liner with the New Jersey Devils and St. Louis Blues, he played just 92 NHL games between 2000 and 2004, collecting more penalty minutes than points. But his name would become notorious, not for anything he did on the ice, but for a chilling criminal case that stunned the hockey world. In April 2004, Danton was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder. The intended target? At first, reports said it was a male acquaintance. Later, court documents revealed that the target was David Frost, Danton's former junior coach, agent, and longtime mentor. Frost was a controversial figure in hockey circles, accused of exerting extreme control over his players' lives. According to the FBI, Danton tried to hire a hitman who turned out to be a police informant to kill Frost. The motive? Prosecutors argued it was to silence Frost over personal and possibly criminal matters. In July 2004, Danton pleaded guilty to the murder-for-hire charge. He was sentenced to 7.5 years in a U.S. federal prison. During his incarceration, Danton gave conflicting stories, sometimes saying the plot was about Frost, other times claiming the target was his estranged father. Frost himself was later tried and acquitted on separate sexual exploitation charges involving junior players, but the association between the two men remains one of the most bizarre relationships in hockey history. After serving 63 months, Danton was released in 2009 and attempted a hockey comeback in Canadian university leagues and European pro teams. But no matter where he played, the shadow of the plot followed him. For most players, retirement is a quiet exit. For Mike Danton, it was a prison cell and a lifetime label as the NHL player who tried to have someone killed. Stan Jonathan was a throwback player even in his own era. A gritty, fearless left winger for the Boston Bruins from 1975 to 1982, he became a fan favorite for his relentless forechecking, willingness to fight, and knack for scoring timely goals. His best season came in 1977-78, when he scored 27 goals and famously went toe-to-toe with Pierre Bouchard in one of the NHL's most replayed fights. After retiring, Jonathan returned to his hometown on the Six Nations Reserve in Ontario, living a quieter life away from the spotlight. But in November 2012, tragedy struck. Jonathan was charged with criminal negligence, causing death after a hunting accident in which 29-year-old Peter Kozid was killed. According to court records, Jonathan had been hunting deer when he fired at what he thought was a target in the brush. Instead, the shot struck Kozid, who had been hunting in the same area. Prosecutors alleged that Jonathan had not taken adequate care to identify his target before firing. The case shook the hockey community. Jonathan, known for his toughness on the ice, now faced the possibility of prison time for an incident he maintained was a horrible mistake. After a lengthy legal process, the charges were ultimately dropped in 2014 when the Crown determined there was no reasonable prospect of conviction. Despite the legal outcome, the event left a lasting shadow over Jonathan's life. For fans, the name once associated with Bruins pride and blue-collar grit now also carried the weight of a fatal accident. While not an act of malice, the tragedy served as a stark reminder that a single moment can redefine even the most respected reputations. Jack Johnson was supposed to have one of the most stable careers in hockey. Drafted 3rd overall in 2005 by the Carolina Hurricanes and later traded to the Los Angeles Kings, the smooth-skating defenseman became a steady NHL presence. Over a career spanning more than 1,000 games, Johnson earned an estimated $50 million in contracts, more than enough to set him up for life. But in November 2014, shocking court documents revealed that Johnson had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy despite still earning $5 million a year with the Columbus Blue Jackets. The culprit? Not bad investments with strangers, but alleged betrayal by his own parents. According to Johnson, he had given his parents, Jack Sr. and Tina Johnson, power of attorney over his finances when he was young and focused on hockey. Instead of safeguarding his wealth, they allegedly took out high-interest loans in his name, using his future earnings as collateral. Court filings claimed the money was spent on lavish vacations, luxury cars, and expensive home renovations without Johnson's knowledge or consent. By the time he discovered the extent of the damage, Johnson was saddled with millions in debt and a tangle of predatory loans. He cut ties with his parents and negotiated settlements with creditors, but the bankruptcy filing made national headlines and overshadowed his on-ice career. Remarkably, Johnson kept playing, eventually winning a Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche in 2022, a rare happy chapter in an otherwise painful personal saga. Yet for many fans, his story stands as one of the most extreme examples of financial mismanagement in sports, a reminder that the greatest threat to an athlete's fortune can sometimes come from the people closest to them. Tommy Salo. Salo was once the pride of Swedish hockey. Known for his calm style in net and lightning-fast reflexes, he backstopped Sweden to Olympic gold in 1994, became an NHL All-Star with the Edmonton Oilers, and played over 500 NHL games with stints in New York, Edmonton, and Colorado. At his peak, Salo was considered one of the league's most technically sound goaltenders, a model of professionalism between the pipes. But in the years after retirement, Salo's life took a darker turn. On August 11, 2020, Swedish police found him slumped over the wheel of his car on the E18 highway. His blood alcohol level tested at 0.32%, 4 times Sweden's legal limit, and high enough to be potentially life-threatening. Witnesses reported his vehicle swerving dangerously before it came to a stop. Salo was charged with aggravated drunk driving. In February 2021, a Swedish court convicted him, sentencing him to 2 months in prison. While not a long sentence, the arrest and conviction shocked fans who still remembered him as an Olympic champion and respected NHL veteran. This wasn't an isolated lapse. Reports in Swedish media suggested Salo had been struggling with alcoholism for years before the arrest. Friends and former teammates expressed concern, noting he had largely withdrawn from public life since leaving hockey. For many in Sweden, the image of Salo in handcuffs stood in stark contrast to the one of him proudly wearing gold in Lillehammer. His story is a reminder that personal battles often continue long after the cheering stops, and that even the most composed athletes can find themselves in a dangerous spiral once the structure of a pro career is gone. Zach Kassian. Kassian entered the NHL with the label every team craves, a big, mean, skilled winger who could play in the top 6 and intimidate opponents. Drafted 13th overall in 2009 by the Buffalo Sabres, he later joined the Vancouver Canucks and Edmonton Oilers, showing flashes of a true power forward, mixing toughness with scoring touch. At his best, he could be a game changer in playoff series. But his career was just as defined by controversy as it was by goals. In October 2015, while with the Montreal Canadiens, Kassian was involved in an early morning truck accident in which he suffered a broken foot and nose. Police said he was a passenger, but reports soon surfaced about substance use, prompting the NHL/NHLPA to place him in the Substance Abuse and Behavioral Health Program. Montreal suspended him without pay for failing to report to the team and later traded him to Edmonton before he had even played a game for the Habs. In Edmonton, Cashian rebuilt his career, becoming a playoff fixture alongside Connor McDavid. Yet discipline issues persisted. Dangerous hits and on-ice incidents led to multiple suspensions. His physical play, once an asset, often crossed the line into recklessness. By the early 2020s, Cashian's role diminished. Injuries, declining production, and questions about consistency pushed him out of the NHL in 2023. In interviews, he's spoken openly about his struggles with alcohol and substance abuse, crediting treatment programs for helping him get his life back on track. For fans, Cashian's story is one of what could have been, a rare mix of size, skill, and grit that was never fully realized because off-ice battles kept pulling him off course. His name now sits alongside other cautionary tales of talent disrupted by personal demons. Boston Bruins 2010 Eastern Conference Semifinals versus Flyers. The 2010 Bruins collapse wasn't just bad, it was historic. Boston had a 3-0 series lead against the Flyers and were absolutely rolling. They outscored Philly 17-9 in the first 3 games and looked like a team on a mission. The Flyers were banged up, missing key players, and no NHL team had come back from a 3-0 deficit in 35 years. But Game 4 went to overtime, and the Flyers stayed alive with a gritty win. Game 5, all Philly. Game 6, another comeback win. Suddenly, Game 7 was in Boston, and the Bruins jumped out to a 3-0 lead in the first period. The series felt over. Then, everything unraveled. JVR made it 3-1, then Hartnell, then Briere. By the third, the game was tied. With just over 7 minutes left, a Bruins too-many-men penalty opened the door. Simon Gagner scored on the power play. Flyers 4, Bruins 3. Boston had blown a 3-0 series lead and a 3-0 Game 7 lead at home. It remains the gold standard for NHL chokes. San Jose Sharks 2014 First Round versus Kings. The 2014 Sharks looked like killers. They opened their series against the defending champion Los Angeles Kings with 3 straight wins, scoring 17 goals across games 1 to 3 and absolutely dismantling Jonathan Quick. It wasn't just a lead, it was a statement. They had 3 chances to close out the series, and they blew all of them. Game 4, the Kings punched back with a 6-3 win. Game 5, the Sharks were shut out. Game 6, a rout. By the time Game 7 hit, momentum was gone. On home ice, San Jose folded, a 5-1 loss in front of stunned fans. Over the final 4 games, they were outscored 18-5, a collapse in every sense. Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, Logan Couture. This was the core built to win. But instead, they became the 4th team in NHL history to blow a 3-0 series lead, and the only one to do it against a defending Cup champion that they just dominated. The Kings, they rode the comeback all the way to the Stanley Cup. The Sharks, they entered a decade-long identity crisis. Toronto Maple Leafs 2013 First Round Game 7 versus Bruins. The Leafs hadn't made the playoffs in 9 years, but here they were. Game 7, up 4-1 over Boston in the 3rd period. 10 minutes to go. Thousands of fans partying outside the ACC. It felt like a new era, but it wasn't. In just 10 minutes, the Bruins did the impossible. They scored 2 goals in 31 seconds to make it 4-3. With 51 seconds left, Patrice Bergeron tied it. In overtime, it was Bergeron again, 5-4. Bruins win. Toronto's collapse is etched into hockey lore. Not just because they lost, but because of how sudden, shocking, and soul-crushing it was. It's a Game 7 that every Leafs fan remembers, and every rival fan brings up. Edmonton Oilers 2006 Stanley Cup Final. The Oilers were the Cinderella story of 2006, an 8th seed that knocked off Detroit, San Jose, and Anaheim, and entered the Stanley Cup Final with all the momentum in the world. In Game 1 against Carolina, they were up 3-0. Then came the moment that changed everything. Dwayne Rollison, their MVP goaltender, went down with a knee injury. Ty Conklin replaced him and made a catastrophic mistake behind the net in the final minute, gifting Carolina the game winner. The Oilers never fully recovered. They battled hard and forced Game 7, but in the biggest game of the year, without their star goalie, they fell short, losing 3-1. They came 1 win away from a miracle cup run. And yet, all fans remember is what could have been. Vancouver Canucks, 2011, Stanley Cup Final versus Bruins. The Canucks were built for this. President's Trophy winners, loaded top to bottom. The Sedin twins, Kessler, Luongo, a dominant power play, and they took a 2-0 lead in the final. Then, Boston broke them. The Bruins outscored Vancouver 21-4 over the final 5 games. In Boston, the Canucks were humiliated. At home, they eked out wins, but Game 7, on their own ice, was supposed to be their moment. Instead, it was a disaster. Luongo was shaky. The Bruins smothered them. 4-0. No cup, no glory. Just riots in the streets, and a haunting reminder that regular season dominance doesn't guarantee anything in June. Tampa Bay Lightning. 2019, first round versus Blue Jackets. The 2018-19 Lightning were a juggernaut. They tied the NHL record for most wins in a season, 62, and featured a loaded roster: Kucherov, Point, Stamkos, Hedman, Vasilevsky. They had the league MVP, the Vezina favorite, and the President's Trophy locked up with weeks left in the season. Then came the playoffs. They faced the 8th-seeded Blue Jackets, a team that barely squeaked in. In Game 1, Tampa jumped to a 3-0 lead after the first period, and then they never led again. Columbus stormed back to win Game 1, then dismantled Tampa in the next 3, a sweep. Kucherov was suspended for a dirty hit. Hedman was injured, Stamkos invisible. The most dominant regular season team in a generation didn't win a single game. It wasn't just a choke, it was a collapse that rewrote what we thought was possible. No President's Trophy team had ever been swept in round 1, until this one. Ottawa Senators 2003 Eastern Conference Final Game 7 versus Devils. 2003 was supposed to be Ottawa's year. They finished first in the NHL with 113 points. Daniel Alfredsson guaranteed a cup. They had the league's best offense, a mobile defense, and a red-hot goalie in Patrick Lalonde. After a 3-1 series hole against New Jersey, they battled back to force Game 7 in Ottawa. The city was electric. They were down 2-1 late and tied it with under 3 minutes to go. The roof almost blew off the Coral Center. Then came the dagger. Jeff Friesen took a loose puck in front and buried the game winner with 2:14 left. The Sens were done. Another Canadian team, another heartbreak. They wouldn't reach that close to the cup again until 2007. And even then, it ended in more pain. Toronto Maple Leafs, 2021, first round versus Canadiens. The Leafs were division champs. They had a superstar core: Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. Carey Price was struggling. The Habs barely made the playoffs, and Montreal had the worst odds of any Canadian team. Toronto took a 3-1 series lead and looked poised to win their first playoff series since 2004. Then, Game 5 went to overtime. Montreal won. Then Game 6, another OT, another Habs win. Game 7 was in Toronto. But the Leafs never showed up. A 3-1 series lead vanished in smoke as Carey Price played like a god and the Leafs offense vanished. Matthews scored just once. Marner, 0. Tavares was out with injury, and the curse stayed alive. St. Louis Blues, 2000. First round versus Sharks. They were the best team in the league. President's Trophy winners. Balanced, deep, experienced. Chris Pronger won both the Norris and the Hart. Pavel Demitra, Al MacInnis, Roman Turek in net. This was the team. Then they ran into the 8th-seeded Sharks. San Jose bullied them early and took a 3-1 series lead. The Blues fought back and forced Game 7 at home. Then, disaster. Midway through the first period, Owen Nolan picked up a loose puck and, from center ice, fired it on goal. It beat Turek clean. One of the most humiliating goals in playoff history. The Sharks won 3-1, sending the Blues home in disgrace. A 114-point season, gone. Montreal Canadiens, 2019, collapse after 96% playoff odds. By mid-February 2019, the Canadiens were sitting pretty. They had a 96% chance to make the playoffs. Carey Price was finally healthy. Shea Weber was anchoring the blue line. Max Domi was having a breakout year. The rebuild looked ahead of schedule. Then, the bottom fell out. Montreal lost 12 of their final 19 games. They couldn't score. The power play dried up. Carey Price was average, and teams like Carolina and Columbus, who had once been behind them, surged ahead. Montreal finished with 96 points and missed the playoffs by 2. It was the best non-playoff record in a decade, and one of the most mathematically improbable chokes of the salary cap era. New York Rangers, 2015, Eastern Conference Final Game 7 versus Lightning. The Rangers had gone to the Cup final the year before. This time, they were better. President's Trophy winners, Henrik Lundqvist playing at a Vezina level, a dominant blue line. Offense by committee. They clawed back from a 3-1 deficit against Washington in round 2. They pushed the Lightning to Game 7 at Madison Square Garden, but when it mattered most, they flatlined. The Lightning shut them out. 2-0. The Rangers barely tested Ben Bishop. No urgency, no push. A cup window that had been wide open for years was suddenly shut. It was Lundqvist's last real shot, and it ended in silence. Detroit Red Wings, a 1996 Western Conference Final versus Avalanche. The Red Wings were unstoppable in 1996. They set the NHL record for regular season wins with 62. Steve Yzerman, Sergei Fedorov, Nick Lidstrom, and behind them, a stone wall named Chris Osgood. They bulldozed through the first 2 rounds and reached the conference final against Colorado, a team they outclassed on paper. But Colorado had something Detroit didn't: Patrick Waugh in net, and Claude Lemieux with bad intentions. The Avalanche stole Game 1 in Detroit, then Game 2. Roy shut the door while Lemieux's infamous hit on Chris Draper lit a powder keg. The Wings never recovered, mentally or physically. They lost in 6, including a 4-1 blowout in the final game. 62 wins, no cup, and a rivalry that would explode into bloodshed for years. Philadelphia Flyers, 2002 Eastern Conference First Round versus Senators. The 2002 Flyers were built to win, a powerhouse team led by Jeremy Roenick, Mark Recchi, and John LeClaire. They had Roman Sechmanek, who finished the season with a 2.05 GAA. The expectation? Cup or bust. Then they ran into the Senators and completely disappeared. The Flyers scored just 2 goals in the entire 5-game series. Both came in Game 2. They were shut out in Games 1, 3, 4, and 5. A historic offensive drought. Ottawa embarrassed them. The Flyers were booed off their own ice. Head coach Bill Barber was fired shortly after. It was one of the most lifeless, inexplicable collapses by a contending team in modern NHL history. San Jose Sharks, 2002, Western Conference Semifinals versus Avalanche. San Jose had built momentum for years, and in 2002, it looked like they were ready to break through. They took a 3-2 series lead over the defending Cup champs, the Colorado Avalanche, and had 2 chances to close it out. Then came Patrick Roy again. In Game 6, Roy posted a shutout, his 22nd in the playoffs. In Game 7, Colorado clamped down. The Sharks couldn't score when it mattered, and Peter Forsberg sealed the deal. San Jose once again collapsed under pressure. Their Cup dreams would have to wait again. Washington Capitals, 2010, First Round versus Canadiens. The Capitals were unstoppable in 2010. President's Trophy winners with 121 points, led by peak Alexander Ovechkin. Their offense was historic. 318 goals. They scored for fun. They drew the 8th-seeded Canadiens, a team that barely made the playoffs. Washington jumped out to a 3-1 series lead. The finish line was in sight. Then came Jaroslav Halak. Halak delivered one of the greatest goaltending performances in playoff history. He stopped 37 of 38 in Game 5, then 53 of 54 in Game 6. In Game 7, the Habs shut the Caps out through 2 periods and held on for a stunning 2-1 win. Washington, the league's best team, was eliminated by an 8 seed and a hot goalie. A decade of regular season dominance, playoff failure, was officially born. Dallas Stars, 2006, First Round versus Avalanche. Dallas had 112 points, a high-powered offense, a healthy Marty Turco. A first-round matchup with the declining Avalanche team. Easy money on paper. Instead, Colorado wrecked them. The Stars lost Game 1 in overtime, then Game 2 in double overtime, then got blown out in Game 5 at home. Turco's playoff issues came roaring to the surface, a .848 save percentage over the series. The Stars' elite defense fell apart. Joe Sakic looked young again. Dallas fans expected a deep run. Instead, they got 5 games of embarrassment. Calgary Flames, 2004, Stanley Cup Final Game 6. The Flames were inches away from glory. Up 3-2 in the series against Tampa Bay. Game 6 was in Calgary. A win meant lifting the Stanley Cup on home ice. Late in the third, with the score tied, Martin Gelina redirected a puck toward the net. It looked in. The building erupted, but there was no goal. The whistle never blew. Replay wasn't conclusive. The Flames never scored again. Tampa won Game 6 in double OT, then finished the job in Game 7. Calgary had been 1 inch, 1 frame, away from the cup. That non-call is still argued about today. New York Islanders, 1993, Wales Conference Final versus Canadiens. After upsetting the 2-time defending champion Penguins, the Isles were the Cinderella team of 1993, but in the conference final, they ran into Montreal and completely ran out of steam. Game 1, a 4-1 loss. Game 2, shutout. The Canadiens crushed them in 5 games. Pierre Turgeon was injured, and the Isles never found their spark. Patrick Roy was unbeatable. The Isles' magical run ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. They wouldn't reach the conference final again for 27 years. Florida Panthers, 2023, Stanley Cup Final versus Golden Knights. Florida was the hottest team in hockey. They clawed into the playoffs as the last seed, then took out Boston, Toronto, and Carolina. Matthew Tkachuk was unstoppable. Sergei Bobrovsky was playing like 2012 Jonathan Quick. Then came Vegas. The Golden Knights steamrolled them. Game 2, 7-2 blowout. Game 5, 9-3 humiliation. Tkachuk was injured. Bobrovsky was human. Vegas exposed every weakness. The Panthers had been the giant slayers, but in the final, they were the ones slaughtered. After one of the greatest underdog runs in years, they were flattened on the sport's biggest stage. But the story didn't end there. In 2024 and 2025, Florida rewrote their legacy. Chris Simon, 30 games, stomp on Jarkko Ruutu. This wasn't a hit. This was assault with a skate blade. Chris Simon had a long fuse, but when it blew, it was nuclear. In December 2007, after taking a routine hit from Jarkko Ruutu near the bench, Simon didn't drop the gloves or throw a cheap shot. He did something far worse. He looked down, raised his skate, and stomped directly on Ruutu's ankle. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't a tangle. It was a calculated act, one that made everyone watching stop breathing. Players, fans, coaches, stunned silent. The NHL dropped the hammer, 30 games. At the time, it was the second longest suspension in league history, and Simon's second massive ban in less than a year. The league had seen elbows, late hits, even stick swings. But using a skate like a weapon, that crossed a line few had ever imagined. The message was clear. This wasn't hockey. This was dangerous. Shane Pinto, 41 games. Proxy betting violation, 2023. This one shocked the modern NHL. Shane Pinto, a rising 22-year-old center for the Ottawa Senators, was handed a 41-game suspension in 2023. And it wasn't for a dirty hit, drug test, or locker room blowup. It was for violating the NHL's gambling policy. At first, the league was vague, only saying the suspension was for activities relating to sports wagering. But behind the scenes, it became clearer. Pinto hadn't bet on NHL games himself. Instead, he had allowed others to place bets using accounts tied to his name, a practice known as proxy betting. The activity took place from a prohibited location, a clear violation of the league's rules, even if he never touched a wager himself. The result? 41 games, one of the longest non-violent suspensions in league history. No criminal charges, no appeal, and no public details from the NHL, just silence, and a statement saying the case was closed. For a player on the rise, it was a brutal lesson. In today's NHL, where betting ads are everywhere, even the appearance of a gambling link is enough to take you off the ice. And Shane Pinto? He became the first modern NHL player to learn that the hard way. Raffi Torres, 41 games. Hit on Jakob Silfverberg. Raffi Torres wasn't just known for big hits. He was known for the ones that crossed the line, shattered the rules, and left bodies behind. By 2015, his name was practically a walking warning label, and then came the hit that ended it all. It was the preseason. The stakes were low, but Torres came flying in and blindsided Jakob Silfverberg with a brutal, high, late headshot that had no purpose. No hockey play, no puck in sight, just violence. Silfverberg dropped instantly, the crowd gasped, and the league acted. 41 games, the longest suspension for an on-ice act in modern NHL history at that time. But it wasn't just about this hit, it was about all of them. This was strike 5 in a career littered with elbows, headshots, and repeat offenses. The NHL didn't just punish the moment, they punished the pattern. And with that, Torres was done. He never laced up for another NHL game again. A career that once thrived on physicality collapsed under the weight of its own recklessness. Jarred Tinordi, 20 games, PED suspension, 2016. Jarred Tinordi was supposed to be the next great shutdown defenseman, a first-round pick with size, reach, and NHL bloodlines. But from the start, his career felt like it was always one step behind the hype. Bounced between the AHL and NHL, traded, scratched, and struggling to find his place. Tinordi never quite lived up to expectations. Then, in 2016, he made headlines for all the wrong reasons. A failed drug test. The league announced that Tinordi had tested positive for a banned performance-enhancing substance. And just like that, he was suspended 20 games. No injury, no misconduct, just a lab result, and a black mark that would follow him. Tinordi insisted it was accidental, that he had unknowingly taken a contaminated supplement. But the NHL doesn't play games with PEDs. They rarely issue bans like this, so when they do, it means something. Tinordi joined a short, infamous list of players caught breaking a code the league rarely even talks about. For a player still trying to prove he belonged, it wasn't just a suspension. It was a setback he couldn't afford. One more chapter in a career that never quite found its story. Marty McSorley, 23 games, stick swing at Donald Brashear. This wasn't a fight, it was a felony. With just seconds left in a blowout loss in 2000, Marty McSorley lost control. Frustrated and humiliated, he skated up behind Donald Brashear and swung his stick like a baseball bat, cracking him in the side of the head. Brashear collapsed instantly. His helmet flew off, and his head hit the ice with a sickening thud. He suffered a grade 3 concussion and had to be stretchered off the ice. The NHL responded with a 23-game suspension, one of the longest ever at the time. But it didn't end there. McSorley was charged with assault, found guilty, and given a conditional discharge. He never played in the NHL again. Once known as Gretzky's protector, he ended his career with one of the ugliest moments in league history, and a legacy that turned in a single swing. Dale Hunter, 21 games, hit on Pierre Turgeon. The play was over. The puck was in. The Islanders were celebrating a series-clinching goal, but Dale Hunter wasn't done. Just seconds after Pierre Turgeon sealed the game, Hunter came flying in full speed and drilled him from behind, sending him crashing shoulder first into the boards. Turgeon's shoulder was separated. He collapsed to the ice in pain, while the crowd's cheers turned to stunned silence. It wasn't a hockey play. It was retaliation, pure and simple. The NHL responded with a 21-game suspension, the longest for an on-ice act in league history at the time. Hunter had always been known as a tough, emotional leader, but after that hit, he was remembered for one of the dirtiest cheap shots the playoffs had ever seen. Sean Hill, 20 games, first PED suspension in NHL history, 2007. Sean Hill made history, the wrong kind. In 2007, while playing for the New York Islanders, Hill became the first player in NHL history suspended for performance-enhancing drugs. It wasn't just the ban that shocked the league, it was the timing. The news broke just hours before Game 5 of a playoff series against the Buffalo Sabres. Hill was pulled from the lineup with no warning. Suddenly, the headlines weren't about hockey. They were about a scandal the NHL had never dealt with before. A 20-game suspension was handed down immediately. Hill denied knowingly taking anything banned, but the league didn't flinch. The test results were clear, and precedent had to be set. It was a turning point. The NHL had long avoided the PED headlines that haunted other major sports. But this moment made it real. For Hill, it was the beginning of the end. He played a few more games after serving the suspension, but his career never recovered. The legacy? Not his 800-plus games or 200-plus points. Just 3 words. First PED suspension. Todd Bertuzzi, 20 games. Attack on Steve Moore. This wasn't just a suspension, it was a scandal. In 2004, Steve Moore delivered a clean but crushing hit on Canucks captain Marcus Naslund. The league let it go. But Vancouver didn't. Weeks later, Todd Bertuzzi went vigilante. He skated up behind Moore, sucker punched him, and drove him headfirst into the ice. Moore's neck was broken. His career was over. The league responded with a 20-game suspension, the rest of the season and playoffs. But it didn't stop there. Bertuzzi was charged with assault and later settled a civil lawsuit out of court. The hit didn't just end a career, it became one of the darkest and most debated moments in NHL history. Chris Simon, 25 games. Stick to the face of Ryan Hallweg. Yes, Chris Simon is back, and this one might be even worse. In 2007, after taking a clean but heavy hit from Ryan Hallweg, Simon snapped. He got up, grabbed his stick like a weapon, and delivered a vicious two-handed slash straight to Hallweg's face. Hallweg went down bleeding. The crowd was stunned. This wasn't a reckless swing. It was targeted, emotional, and dangerous. The NHL handed Simon a 25-game suspension, the longest for an on-ice act in league history at the time. It should have been a final warning. But for Simon, it was just the beginning of one of the most violent repeat offender records the NHL has ever seen. Tom Wilson, 20 games, hit on Oskar Sundqvist. By 2018, Tom Wilson wasn't just a power forward. He was the NHL's most polarizing hitter. Then came the preseason. In a game that meant nothing, he delivered a headshot to Oskar Sundqvist. Late, high, and completely avoidable. Sundqvist was injured. The hit sparked outrage. The NHL had seen enough. 20 games, one of the longest suspensions in years. Wilson appealed and got it reduced to 14. But the damage to his reputation was done. It wasn't just about one incident. It was the boiling point of a pattern, and the message was clear. Next time, there may not be a second chance. Nate Schmidt, 20 games. PED violation, 2018. In 2018, Vegas defenseman Nate Schmidt was hit with a 20-game suspension after testing positive for a banned substance. The catch? The amount found was microscopic. 7 billionths of a gram, according to Schmidt, who insisted it came from environmental contamination. He fought the ruling, but the NHL didn't budge. The suspension stood. Schmidt served the full 20 games and returned to form. But even for a respected player, the league's first major PED case involving a star left a mark that never fully faded. Jesse Bulleris, 25 games, cross-check to the face. Jesse Bulleris wasn't a star. He was a fringe enforcer, barely hanging onto a roster spot. But in 2007, he earned a permanent place in NHL infamy. After a routine scrum, he viciously cross-checked Ryan Kesler in the face. Stick up, full force. Kesler dropped instantly. No build-up, no reason, just a dirty, reckless play. The NHL responded with a 25-game suspension, tying the record at the time. Boulouris was waived days later and never played another full NHL season. One of the shortest and ugliest careers the league has ever seen. Matt Cook, 17 games, hit on Ryan McDonough. By 2011, Matt Cook was already on thin ice. He'd ended Mark Savard's career with a blindside hit, delivered multiple elbows, and earned a reputation as the league's most dangerous repeat offender. Then came the elbow to Ryan McDonough's head, late, high, and reckless. The NHL came down hard, 10 games plus the entire first round of the playoffs, 17 games total. This time, even the Penguins had seen enough. Cook was benched, forced to publicly apologize, and sent a message: adapt or disappear. The league later cited him directly when rewriting its rules on headshots. Dennis Wideman, 20 games, hit on a linesman. In 2016, Dennis Wideman took a hard hit, skated dazed toward the bench, and out of nowhere, cross-checked linesman Don Henderson from behind. The official collapsed, and the league ruled it was intentional. Wideman was suspended 20 games, one of the harshest punishments ever for contact with an official. He claimed he was concussed and disoriented. The NHLPA appealed, and it was eventually reduced to 10. But the fallout stuck. Wideman's reputation took a hit, and his career was never the same. Tom Lysiak, 20 games, tripping a linesman on purpose. In 1983, Tom Lysiak was a skilled forward, not a goon. But during a face-off, in a moment of pure frustration, he stuck out his leg and deliberately tripped a linesman skating behind him. It wasn't subtle, and it wasn't ignored. The NHL hit him with a 20-game suspension, one of the longest ever at the time for abuse of an official. Lysiak never did anything like it again, but that one moment became the lasting headline of his career. Radko Gudas, 10 games, head hit on Mika Zibanejad. By 2016, Radko Gudas had built a reputation as a reckless hitter, powerful, unpredictable, and often right on the edge. But his hit on Mika Zibanejad wasn't borderline. It was late, high, and targeted the head from the start. Zibanejad went down hard. The NHL didn't hesitate. 10 games. They called the hit unnecessary and dangerous, the kind of play they were trying to eliminate. It wasn't the longest suspension of Gudas's career, but it was the one that branded him as a player who couldn't be trusted when the gloves stayed on. And from that point forward, every hit he threw came under the microscope. Ty Domi, 8 games, sucker punch on Ulf Samuelsson. Ty Domi was never afraid to throw hands. But in 1995, he threw the wrong one at the wrong time. Right after a face-off, with no warning and no fight agreed to, Domi sucker punched Ulf Samuelsson in the face, sending him crumpling to the ice. Samuelsson never saw it coming. The punch was so sudden and violent, it shocked even seasoned enforcers. The NHL responded with an 8-game suspension, one of the harshest of the decade for a single punch. It wasn't during a fight, it wasn't retaliation, it was pure rage, delivered at full force. For Domi, a player known for walking the line, this was the night he stomped over it. And for Samuelsson, it was a knockout that no one, including him, ever expected. Chris Pronger, 8 games, stomp on Ryan Kesler. Chris Pronger was a Hall of Famer, a former MVP, and one of the most feared defensemen of his era. But with that dominance came a reputation, and in 2008, it boiled over. During a net front scrum, Kesler fell to the ice, and Pronger, instead of stepping over him, drove his skate blade down onto Kessler's calf. The league reviewed the footage frame by frame. It wasn't a mistake, it was deliberate. An 8-game suspension followed, and while that number may seem small today, it was one of the longest ever given to a star player at the time. More shocking? It was Pronger's 8th career suspension. He was a champion, a leader, and a Norris winner. But for many fans, this moment reminded them that even the elite could cross the line. Garrett Ross, 20 games. Drugs of abuse policy violation, AHL 2019. While technically an AHL suspension, it's worth noting. In 2019, Garrett Ross was suspended 20 games under the AHL-NHL joint substance abuse policy for use of a drug of abuse. The exact substance was never made public. Ross was a former Blackhawks prospect, but this incident ended his chances at a return to the NHL. The league's message was clear: Even minor league players under NHL jurisdiction were held to the same off-ice standards. Marty McSorley, the enforcer who took it too far. For most of his career, Marty McSorley wasn't just an enforcer. He was Wayne Gretzky's enforcer. When the Great One skated, McSorley was never far behind. He guarded Gretzky like a Secret Service agent with fists, first in Edmonton, then in Los Angeles. He followed Gretzky to California to protect the crown jewel of hockey. And he did his job well, dropping the gloves with anyone who dared touch number 99. He became beloved in LA, the Protector, the Punisher. Fans respected him, opponents feared him. He wasn't just some goon. He could skate, move the puck, and rack up points when needed. But above all else, he was loyal. Until one night in 2000, everything changed. McSorley was nearing the end of his career, slower, older, maybe more bitter. He was playing for the Bruins now, far from Gretzky, far from Hollywood. His opponent? Donald Brashear, one of the league's toughest men. The two had bad blood. Earlier in the game, Brashear had taunted McSorley, danced around him, and humiliated him in a failed fight. With seconds left in a blowout, McSorley skated toward him, but he didn't drop the gloves. He swung his stick, baseball style, and hit Brashear directly in the head. Brashear collapsed, unconscious before he hit the ice. The league erupted. McSorley wasn't just suspended, he was charged criminally, convicted of assault. The NHL banned him for a year. He never played another game. For fans, it was betrayal in reverse. The loyal enforcer who lived by the code had broken it. Enforcers were supposed to fight with honor, face to face, not swing sticks like weapons. He wasn't remembered as Gretzky's guardian anymore. He was remembered for the cheap shot that ended a career, and his own. John Scott, the meme that mocked the system. John Scott didn't betray fans. He betrayed expectations, in the best way possible. At 6 feet 8 inches and 270 pounds, he wasn't supposed to be anything more than a sideshow, a throwback, a fighter in an era that was phasing them out. He was slow. He barely scored. Over 9 years, he had just 5 career goals, but he could punch, and that kept him in the league. Then came 2016. The NHL wanted to clean up the All-Star game, make it faster, younger, more skilled. So fans? They decided to troll the whole system and vote John Scott into the All-Star game, and it worked. He won the fan vote. A joke, right? Just a gag? But then the NHL stepped in. They traded him to Montreal, who sent him down to the AHL. He wasn't even eligible anymore. The league tried to erase him, but Scott doubled down. He wrote a letter. He told his story. He had kids, a family. He was proud of his career, and he wasn't going to let the NHL bury him just because he didn't fit their image. So what did the NHL do? They caved. Scott showed up in Nashville, skated in the All-Star game, and then scored 2 goals. The crowd went wild. Players lifted him in celebration. He was voted MVP. The league handed him a check for $1 million and a giant smile. And then he retired. A mic drop. He didn't need 30 goal seasons. He didn't need awards. Just one moment. And he turned the league's elite event into a working-class legend. He didn't betray anyone. But for the NHL brass, it felt like betrayal. Their polished image had been hijacked by a fighter, but for the fans, it was beautiful. Donald Brashear, feared by everyone, even his own teammates. Donald Brashear wasn't just a fighter, he was a problem. At 6 feet 3 inches, 240 pounds, he threw punches like wrecking balls. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't technical, he just beat you down. And for nearly 2 decades, no one wanted to be on the receiving end. He had over 2,600 penalty minutes, played over 1,000 NHL games, and dropped the gloves with every tough guy of his era. Ty Domi, Bob Probert, McSorley, you name it, he fought them. But Brashear didn't just build a reputation for toughness. He built a reputation for rage. He once cross-checked Buffalo's Eric Daze in the face during a preseason game. No gloves dropped, just violence. Then there was his infamous feud with Rangers enforcer Sandy McCarthy. Racial slurs were allegedly thrown. Bad blood boiled for years. They nearly fought in warm-ups. Brashear thrived on tension. But the moment that defined him, March 2000. Vancouver versus Boston. He squared up with Marty McSorley. Or rather, McSorley squared up with him. The fight didn't happen, so McSorley did the unthinkable. He slashed Brashear in the head with his stick. Brashear collapsed. His helmet flew off. His head hit the ice. He suffered a grade 3 concussion. That one moment changed the NHL forever. New rules, stricter enforcement, stick penalties redefined. And Brashear, he recovered, but his image became twisted. To some, he was a victim. To others, he invited the chaos. Even teammates admitted he could be volatile. He reportedly fought his own goalie in practice. He once threw water bottles and sticks after being benched. Later in his career, he got cut by the Rangers for being a locker room cancer. After his NHL career ended, he drifted into MMA and boxing. Eventually, he hit rock bottom, arrested for drug possession, working at Tim Hortons and selling cars just to stay afloat. For a man who once struck fear across the league, the fall was hard and fast. Brescher didn't just fight his opponents, he fought everyone, teammates, coaches, even himself. Chris Simon, the repeat offender. Chris Simon was terrifying. Long hair, cold stare, and fists like cinder blocks. Over 15 seasons, he racked up over 1,800 penalty minutes and a rap sheet longer than some criminals. But it wasn't just the fights, it was how he fought. He was violent, unpredictable. And he crossed the line. A lot. He played for 7 different teams: Washington, Colorado, Chicago, Calgary, the Rangers, Islanders, Minnesota. And at every stop, he left a mark, often on someone's face. He was suspended 8 times by the NHL. In 2007 alone, he delivered 2 of the most infamous plays in modern hockey. First, Ryan Hallweg. Simon took a hit along the boards, nothing unusual. Then, in a flash of rage, he turned and two-handed slashed Hallweg in the face. Not the legs, not the arms, the face. 25-game suspension. You'd think that would have ended it. But later that same year, he stomped on Jarkko Ruutu's leg with his skate blade. A move that could have ended a career or worse. 30-game suspension. And just like that, his career was radioactive. This wasn't just enforcing, this was criminal. Even fellow tough guys distanced themselves. There's a code in hockey. You fight face to face, you drop the gloves, you don't stomp, you don't slash skulls. Simon didn't just betray teams, he betrayed the code. The one unwritten rule that kept enforcers respected. He was out of the league soon after. No send-off, no tribute, just silence. Matt Cook, the predator who hid behind the rules. Matt Cook wasn't your typical enforcer. He didn't drop the gloves often. He didn't rack up heavyweight fight totals. But if you ask fans and players who they feared most in the 2000s, his name always came up. Because Matt Cook didn't fight you, he hunted you. He was the guy who came out of nowhere, blindsided you, and left you twitching on the ice while he skated away, pretending nothing happened. And he did it over and over again. He nearly ended Mark Savard's career with a blindside headshot that shook the league. No penalty, no suspension. Just Savard lying on the ice, motionless. Then it happened again. Ryan McDonough, Artem Anisimov, Scott Walker, Erik Karlsson. Different teams, same hit, same aftermath. Stretchers, concussions, outrage. Eventually, the league had to act. He was suspended multiple times. 5 games, 10 games, then finally 17 games after another headshot in 2011. That one included the playoffs. The Penguins, the team he played for, were publicly disgusted. Ray Shero, the GM, called his behavior unacceptable. Even Mario Lemieux, a Hall of Famer and owner, released a statement condemning the kind of play Cook represented. Cook claimed he'd change. He even went to behavioral counseling to fix his game, but fans didn't buy it, because by then he wasn't an enforcer. He was a villain, not respected like McGrattan or Orr, hated, feared, and seen as a player who weaponized the gray areas of hockey until it left bodies behind. Sean Avery, the pest who burned every bridge. Some enforcers dropped gloves. Sean Avery dropped chaos. He was smaller than most goons, less powerful. But what he lacked in fists, he made up for in mouth. He wasn't just an agitator, he was a specialist in psychological warfare. Avery didn't just play the game, he infected it. He chirped players non-stop, insulted families, and girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, made enemies in every arena. One time, he turned around in front of Martin Brodeur and waved his stick in his face during a power play, literally screening him by taunting him. It was so ridiculous the NHL invented a new rule on the spot, the Avery Rule. But his lowest moment? December 2008. In front of reporters, unprompted, he mocked Flames defenseman Dion Phaneuf. Not for his play, but for dating Avery's ex-girlfriend, actress Elisha Cuthbert. He called it sloppy seconds. The NHL suspended him immediately. Not for a hit, not for a fight, but for words. His team, the Dallas Stars, refused to welcome him back. His own teammates told him to stay away. He was toxic, a problem in every locker room. He clashed with coaches, burned bridges, and never knew when to shut up. When he finally retired, no tribute video, no jersey ceremony, just silence. Even now, he's still chirping people online, still chasing controversy. Because for Avery, the game was never about team, it was about attention. And when you're an enforcer with no loyalty and a big mouth, you don't get remembered, you get deleted. Rafi Torres, the human wrecking ball. Rafi Torres had one goal: make opponents afraid to skate with the puck. And for a while, it worked. He was fast, explosive, and when he hit, you felt it. But the problem? His hits weren't just hard, they were illegal. And sometimes they were career-threatening. Torres didn't just flirt with the line, he danced on it. In 2011, he left Brent Seabrook concussed with a vicious blindside shoulder to the head. In 2012, he launched himself into Marian Hossa during a playoff game, the kind of hit that makes your stomach drop, even watching the replay. Hossa was stretchered off. Torres was suspended 25 games. You'd think that would be the end of it. But in 2015, he came back and did it again. This time, he clipped Jakob Silfverberg in the head. The league had seen enough. 41 games, nearly half a season, one of the longest suspensions in NHL history. That was it. No redemption arc, no farewell season, just silence. He never played another NHL game. Torres claimed he wasn't a dirty player, just a hard hitter. But fans, players, even coaches had a different word: reckless. In the world of enforcers, there's a line between playing tough and playing dirty, and Rafi Torres spent his whole career on the wrong side of it. Todd Bertuzzi, the hit that changed everything. Todd Bertuzzi wasn't just an enforcer. He was a power forward with a mean streak. He could fight, he could hit, and he could score. In 2003, he dropped 46 goals, 97 points, and still found time to throw hands. He was the full package, a top-line winger who played like a bottom-line bruiser, and in Vancouver, he was worshipped, big, physical, dominant. The kind of guy you hoped was on your team. But then, it all went dark. March 8th, 2004. The Canucks were playing the Avalanche. Earlier that season, Avs forward Steve Moore had taken out Marcus Naslund, Vancouver's captain, with a controversial hit. No penalty, no suspension. The Canucks wanted revenge, and Bertuzzi delivered it, but not in a fight. He jumped Moore from behind, sucker punching him in the back of the head, then drove him face first into the ice. Moore lay motionless. Broken neck, concussion, career over. The league went silent. Bertuzzi was suspended indefinitely. He missed the rest of the season, 20 games plus the playoffs. And the fallout was nuclear. Lawsuits, criminal charges, media chaos, and one of the ugliest moments in modern hockey history. This wasn't just a bad hit. It was a line crossed forever. He apologized publicly, said he never meant for it to go that far, said he was just trying to stand up for his teammates. But for fans outside Vancouver, that didn't matter. He wasn't a hero anymore. He was a monster. Even after he returned to the NHL, he was never the same. He bounced from team to team. No more top-line minutes. No more dominance. Just a cloud that followed him everywhere. To this day, Steve Moore never played another game. And Todd Bertuzzi, he never outran the consequences of one decision and one punch that changed the enforcer role forever. Zach Rinaldo, the guy who just didn't get it. Zach Rinaldo never met a hit he didn't want to finish, no matter how illegal it was. He didn't have the size, he didn't have the skill, but he had one job: make noise, be a wrecking ball, start chaos. And from the minute he stepped into the NHL, that's exactly what he did. But here's the problem: he never evolved. The league changed, headshots got punished, blindside hits were out. But Ronaldo, he kept skating like it was 1994. Late hits, dirty hits, knee on knees, charging, hitting guys who didn't even have the puck. Suspension after suspension, 7 in total, fines, criticism, 0 growth. One time, he checked a player from behind, got ejected, and then bragged about it after the game. He literally said, "I changed the game with one hit. I'm proud of myself." The league wasn't. He was suspended 8 games. That wasn't enforcing, that was delusion. He had brief stints with Philly, Boston, Arizona, Nashville, and Calgary. Every time, it was the same story. He'd play a few shifts, throw a reckless hit, get suspended, and ride the press box. He wasn't feared. He wasn't respected. He was a liability with skates. Eventually, even the toughest teams moved on. Because being tough, it doesn't mean being dumb, and Ronaldo never seemed to understand the difference. He didn't protect teammates. He endangered them. And in a league moving towards speed and skill, there's no room for a guy who thinks a highlight reel hit is worth a highlight reel lawsuit. Ty Domi, the last of the street soldiers. Ty Domi wasn't just an enforcer, he was a celebrity. In Toronto, he was larger than life, listed at 5'10" but built like a tank. He fought everyone, Traber, Larac, McSorley, and loved every second of it. Fans adored him, Coaches relied on him, and teammates trusted him with their lives. But Domi was also reckless, arrogant, and sometimes dangerous. He holds the record for the most penalty minutes in Maple Leafs history, over 3,500 in his career, and he earned every one. He once sucker punched Ulf Samuelsson and knocked him out cold. No warning, no square up. Just a surprise left hook to the jaw. He got suspended 8 games. Another time, he squirted water at a heckling fan in Philadelphia, which led to that fan falling into the penalty box with him. Domi didn't back down. He squared up, even with the glass broken and security scrambling. His explanation? If you're going to chirp, you better be ready. But it wasn't all violence. Domi loved the spotlight. Commercials, talk shows, celebrity appearances. He signed autographs like a star player and ran the city like a mayor. Problem was, he started to believe the hype. Toward the end of his career, his ego grew bigger than his fists. He refused to fight new enforcers, took lazy penalties, pouted when benched. And eventually, the Leafs moved on. He retired quietly. No farewell tour, no send-off game. Because while fans respected his heart, the league had moved on. The enforcer era was fading, and even the toughest guys couldn't fight off time. Georges Laraque, the gentleman assassin. Georges Laraque might be the most feared enforcer who never actually hated his opponents. At 6 feet 3 inches, 260 pounds, he was built like a superhero, and he fought like one. But he didn't chirp, he didn't cheap shot, he didn't stomp or slash. He just looked you in the eye and asked, "Wanna go?" And most of the time, the answer was no. Because once the gloves dropped, Laraque ended you. No wild punches, no dirty tricks, just raw power, clean technique, and absolute dominance. He destroyed heavyweights, Probert, McGrattan, Bugard, and never once celebrated. Never raised a fist after, never taunted the bench. He called it respect, old school warrior code. But the league didn't care about respect. They cared about speed and skill. By 2010, the game was changing fast. Laraque was signed by the Montreal Canadiens, the team he dreamed of playing for as a kid. But the team didn't want him to fight anymore. They wanted him to score. He didn't. In 61 games, he had just 1 goal. They cut him mid-season, not for discipline, not for violence, just irrelevance. He was one of the cleanest enforcers in league history, and still got erased. He retired quietly. No send-off, no tribute. Just another tough guy discarded by a league that had moved on. To this day, Laraque defends his role, says fighting protected players, says he kept things safer, and ironically, he might be right. But right or wrong doesn't matter when the game leaves you behind. Stand-up style, pre-1950s to 1960s. Let's start really old school. We're talking the 1920s through the 50s, when goalies played what was called the stand-up style. The gear was minimal to the point of reckless. Pads were slim and stiff, basically stuffed leather straps that soaked up water and got even heavier as games went on. Masks didn't even exist yet. Every shot to the face was a gamble. Broken noses, lost teeth, hundreds of stitches over a career. It was normal. The gloves were primitive too. The catcher was small and rigid. The blocker was barely more than a reinforced glove. Goalies had to master their sticks. Stick work wasn't a luxury, it was survival. Blocking shots, steering pucks into the corner, jabbing loose pucks away from oncoming forwards, it was their main tool. The philosophy was simple: stay on your feet at all costs. Dropping to the ice wasn't just discouraged, it was seen as desperate, even weak. Once you were down, you were out of the play. Coaches drilled it into their goalies: stand tall, be big, react fast. Kick saves, pad stacks, rarely, but mostly upright reflex stops. They relied on angles, timing, and raw nerve. Think Turk Broda in Toronto, staring down slap shots barefaced, or Tiny Thompson in Boston, calmly deflecting pucks with surgical precision. They were like armed guards in front of the net, all defiance and grit. But the style wasn't particularly technical. It was raw, intuitive, often chaotic. It demanded incredible toughness, anticipation, and bravery. Every save was a battle, every game a test of who could take more punishment. And it worked for a while, but the game was evolving. Shooters were getting faster, sticks better, shots heavier. By the late 1950s and early 60s, cracks in the style showed. Jacques Plante's introduction of the mask in 1959 wasn't just about safety, it signaled a new mindset. Goalies could afford to drop, to experiment with new stances. Soon after, innovators like Glenn Hall would push the boundaries even further with the early butterfly style, setting the stage for a revolution in goaltending that would redefine the position entirely. Stand-up wasn't gone overnight. It lingered into the 60s and even the 70s with hybrids. but the seeds were planted for the biggest transformation the position had ever seen. Classic butterfly, 1970s to 80s. Then, the game changed forever. The butterfly style emerged as a revolution in goaltending technique, challenging decades of stand-up orthodoxy. Instead of staying on their feet at all costs, goalies deliberately dropped to their knees, spreading their pads in a wide V to seal off the ice. Glenn Hall is often credited as the pioneer, experimenting with it even in the late 50s and 60s. But it was Tony Esposito in the 1970s who made it famous and widely respected. Why the switch? Simple. Shooters loved going low. Ice-level shots were harder for stand-up goalies to block consistently. The butterfly took away that easy option, forcing snipers to pick corners instead of sliding it 5-hole or along the ice. It also introduced a new way to control rebounds. By dropping and squaring up, butterfly goalies could smother pucks or steer them safely into the corners instead of kicking them right back into danger. It was systematic, intentional, more coverage with less guesswork. But let's be clear, early butterfly wasn't slick. Pads were made of heavy, waterlogged leather. No modern knee stacks to cushion the drop. No synthetic slides for easy lateral pushes. Dropping into the butterfly was like slamming onto concrete. Goalies just hoped the puck would hit them. And crucially, it wasn't an absolute shift. This era was a transition. Many goalies used hybrid styles, blending the best of stand-up and butterfly. Tony Esposito, for example, was famous for mixing sharp angles with a half butterfly drop, reading the play and choosing when to stay up or go down. Coaches didn't have a standardized butterfly curriculum yet. It was often self-taught, adapted on the fly, and personalized. To older fans and coaches, it looked risky, even sloppy. But results spoke loudly. Goals against averages dropped. Low shots were gobbled up. Young goalies started adopting butterfly elements everywhere. By the 1980s, the style was spreading like wildfire. Goaltenders began rethinking the entire crease. It wasn't just about blocking high or low. It was about depth, angle, timing, and controlling space. It wasn't the final form of the butterfly, but it was the blueprint, a turning point. Goaltending was no longer just reflexes and guts. It was on its way to becoming a science. Hybrid style, late 1980s to 2000s. Enter the hybrid era, the evolution that changed goaltending forever. It didn't happen overnight. The true hybrid approach began emerging in the late 1980s, especially with Patrick Waugh, who debuted in 1985 and rose to fame by winning the 1986 Stanley Cup and the Conn Smythe Trophy as a rookie. Before that, butterfly was growing in popularity, but it had limits. Shooters learned to fake low and pick corners, exploiting pure butterfly goalies who dropped too early. Goalies realized they couldn't just drop by default. They needed to read plays, adapt in real time. That's when the hybrid style was born. It wasn't one single move. It was a mindset, a blend of stand-up patience with butterfly coverage. Goalies used upright positioning to stay tall on rising shots and dropped into the butterfly only when it made sense. Patrick Waugh became the poster child for this style. He wouldn't drop unless he needed to. He stayed square, controlled his depth, and forced shooters to make the first move. Other goalies followed: Ed Belfour, Martin Brodeur. They all had unique twists. Some used more stand-up elements, others leaned more on butterfly, but all understood the hybrid philosophy. The 1990s saw this approach become standard. Equipment evolved. Pads got lighter and more flexible. Masks gave better visibility. Gloves and blockers improved. Goalie coaching advanced. Goalies were taught when to drop, how to stay square, and how to control rebounds instead of just blocking them. It wasn't about reflexes alone, it was about strategy. Hybrid goalies were like chess players in the crease, anticipating the play and reacting with purpose. Importantly, even in the 90s, the transition wasn't uniform. Some goalies used more stand-up on perimeter shots and only dropped for high danger chances. Others adopted the butterfly more often, but retained stand-up elements for certain angles. The hybrid wasn't a single technique, it was a toolbox. By the 2000s, the hybrid style laid the foundation for modern athletic hybrid techniques. Moves like the RVH, reverse vertical horizontal, became standard, letting goalies seal the post while staying ready to push across the crease. Post-integration became essential. Modern goalies didn't just rely on butterfly or stand-up, they used everything. Simply put, the hybrid era was goaltending growing up. It transformed the position from a series of desperate blocks into a science of reading, reacting, and controlling the game on the goalie's terms. and it's still the base for how nearly every elite goalie plays today. Butterfly blocking, 1990s to 2010s. By the 1990s and 2000s, the butterfly wasn't just a style anymore, it became a science. Early butterfly goalies used to just drop and hope the puck hit them, but now, it was about precision and efficiency. Goalie equipment transformed. Pads got wider, lighter, and flatter at the bottom to seal the ice completely. No more gaps for trickling pucks. Leg pads featured built-in knee stacks for stability and consistent coverage. Chest protectors bulked up but streamlined for mobility. Sticks evolved too, with bigger paddles to seal 5-hole passes. Coaching changed everything. Instead of relying purely on reflexes, goalies were trained to block rather than react. They adopted a wide, square stance with knees turned in and pads flush to the ice. The idea was simple but brutal for shooters. Take away the bottom of the net and force the puck up. Butterfly blocking goalies trusted their angles. They didn't scramble. They didn't overcommit. They read the shooter, dropped quickly and efficiently, and stayed square so rebounds died in their gear. Saves weren't flashy. They were predictable, reliable. But that didn't mean it was robotic. Martin Brodeur added his own flair with paddle-down moves, poke checks, and the occasional 2-pad stack to surprise shooters. He wasn't the pure blocking butterfly type, but he blended the method with hybrid unpredictability. Others, like Roberto Luongo and Mika Kiprusov, leaned more into classic blocking butterfly with textbook form. Systems evolved too. Teams structured their defense to funnel shots to the outside, knowing their goalie would cover the low shot reliably. Rebound control became an art form. Coaches drilled goalies to steer pucks into the corners or smother them completely. Shooters hated it. Gone were the easy 5-hole goals or low blocker snipes. If you didn't pick a corner perfectly, the goalie had it. NHL scoring dropped dramatically in the late 90s and early 2000s. Games became defensive battles. Critics called it boring. Fans missed the chaos. But for goalies, it was dominance. The butterfly blocking era was their answer to the increasing speed and skill of shooters. It was the time when goalies turned the position into a technical craft and forced the NHL to think about rule changes to open the game back up. RVH/reverse VH, late 2000s to present. As the game evolved, goalies needed new tricks to keep up. Offense got faster. Players were smarter, attacking from behind the net and exploiting any tiny gap near the posts. Enter the reverse VH, RVH, a technique that began emerging in the late 2000s but didn't fully spread until the mid-2000s and teens. Before RVH, goalies mostly used the VH, gun vertical-horizontal method. One pad vertical against the post, the other flat on the ice, with the torso pressed tight. It worked, but shooters adapted, exploiting holes over the shoulder or squeaking pucks under the pad. RVH flipped the concept. Instead of standing on the post, the goalie dropped down entirely. One pad stayed vertical to seal the post airtight. The other pad laid horizontal along the ice to block wraparounds and low-angle shots. Early innovators like Jonathan Quick were already experimenting with it around 2008 to 9. Quick's explosive post-to-post movement and tight seal at the post made it clear this was the future. By the mid-2000s teens, RVH was standard in goalie coaching everywhere. Why did it matter? Because RVH shut down greasy goals. Those wraparounds that used to catch goalies scrambling, gone. Low-angle bank shots off skates, sealed. Passes from behind the net, intercepted or smothered. Coaches started teaching RVH as essential post-integration. Goalies didn't just butterfly in the open. Now they flowed seamlessly into RVH when play went behind the net or below the goal line. And the best didn't just use it, they mastered it. Carey Price turned it into art, calmly gliding post to post, sealing every gap while reading plays like a chess grandmaster. Henrik Lundqvist refined it too, using his balance and precision to erase scoring chances from impossible angles. RVH also spawned variations. Overlap, RVH, post lean, quick pushes, out of RVH to cover cross-crease plays. It wasn't just one move, it became a toolkit. Critics say RVH is overused or exposes the high glove side if a goalie gets lazy. True. But that's the chess match. Modern goalies train to read when RVH is the right choice and when to pop up or transition into butterfly. In the end, RVH transformed post play from a frantic scramble into a controlled, technical battleground. It's modern goaltending distilled. Athleticism, technique, anticipation, all in one move. Butterfly slide and athleticism. 2000s to now. Today's goalies aren't just puck blockers, they're elite athletes in every sense. The old school days of standing stiff in net or just flopping to cover space, gone. Modern goalies train like sprinters and gymnasts, with explosive leg strength, flexibility, and razor-sharp reflexes. One of the most critical moves in this evolution is the butterfly slide. Instead of getting up and resetting to move laterally, goalies stay in butterfly, pushing off their inside edge to glide post to post. It's fast, it's smooth, and it lets them track east-west passes without losing their seal on the ice. This change wasn't just about looking flashy. It was born out of necessity. Offenses got smarter. Cross-ice passes became standard on power plays. Players started feeding pucks through the seam with pinpoint accuracy. If you couldn't move laterally in butterfly, you were toast. Goalies today work relentlessly on edge work drills, practicing pushes and recoveries over and over so they can explode side to side without leaving gaps. They don't just block, they read the play, anticipate passes, and arrive square before the shot is even released. Watch Andrei Vasilevsky. He makes full splits look routine, sealing the ice while still flashing the glove up top. His post-to-post slides are so fast, he seems to teleport. Or Igor Shesterkin, who's a master at baiting shooters into thinking they have an opening before flicking out a pad or snaring the puck with that dramatic glove save. And it's not just NHL stars. Even junior and college goalies train this way. Butterfly slide is fundamental now. If you can't move in butterfly, you can't play at the top level. But it's not only about raw power, it's about control. A great butterfly slide keeps the goalie's chest square, pads sealed, and rebound control tight. It's technical art, not just chaos. And then there's the recovery. Modern goalies don't just make one save. They're trained to bounce back instantly, save, push, reset, over and over. The days of making a single highlight stop and lying on your back, done. Ultimately, the butterfly slide and today's insane goalie athleticism are responses to the speed and creativity of the modern game. As shooters got better, goalies had to evolve. And they did, turning the crease into a chessboard where every move, push, and slide is part of the plan. Modern hockey? It's not just about sealing the ice. It's about reacting, reading, recovering, all in the blink of an eye. Wayne Gretzky to the Kings, August 9th, 1988. The day hockey changed forever. The Edmonton Oilers had just won their 4th Stanley Cup in 5 years, and yet they traded Wayne Gretzky, not for another superstar, not for a franchise-changing package, but for $15 million in cash, Jimmy Carson, Martin Gelinas, and 3 first-round picks spread across 1989, 1991, and 1993. Why? Owner Peter Pocklington needed money to pay off debts, to fund business deals, and so he sold the greatest player of all time. Before the trade, Gretzky had already scored over 1,800 points and redefined the sport. After it, he helped put hockey on the map in the United States. He drew celebrities, ESPN deals, expansion teams. He scored over 1,400 more points and brought the Kings to the Stanley Cup final in '93. The Oilers. They still had Mark Messier and a strong core, and they won one more cup in '90, but it never felt the same. The dynasty crumbled, and the fan base never fully forgave the front office. The great one was gone, and for nothing close to his worth. Phil Esposito to the Rangers. In 1975, the Boston Bruins traded away a legend, one of the most dominant scorers in NHL history. Phil Esposito, along with defenseman Carol Vadnais, was sent to the New York Rangers in exchange for Brad Park, Rattel, and Joe Zanussi. On paper, it looked fair. Park and Rattel were elite, intelligent, proven. But Boston wasn't just trading talent, they were trading an icon. Espo had led the league in goals 6 times in 7 years, including staggering seasons of 76 and 66 goals, and a 68-goal campaign just a few years later. He wasn't just scoring, he was rewriting record books. Even as he aged, he still delivered in New York, 34, 38, and 42 goals in his first 3 full seasons as a Ranger. That's not decline, that's still dominance. Park and Rattel contributed in Boston, but the trade marked the end of an era, the breakup of the big bad Bruins at their peak. Esposito wasn't just a star, he was the face of a franchise. And in shipping him out, Boston closed the book on one of the most fearsome teams in NHL history. Patrick Roy to the Avalanche. December 2nd, 1995. After giving up 9 goals and being left in net as punishment, Patrick Roy had enough. He skated past his coach, past his teammates, and told the GM, "I've played my last game for Montreal." 4 days later, he was gone. Montreal sent Waugh and captain Mike Keane to the Colorado Avalanche for Jocelyn Thibault, Martin Rusinski, and Andrei Kovalenko. None of them became impact players. Thibault was a serviceable goalie. Rusinski had some flashes, but this wasn't a hockey trade. It was a meltdown. In Colorado, Waugh turned a great team into a champion. He won 2 more Stanley Cups, another Conn Smythe, and gave the Avalanche instant credibility. Montreal, meanwhile, spiraled and didn't win another playoff series until 2002. To this day, Montreal fans still call it one of the darkest trades in franchise history, because they didn't just lose a superstar, they lost their identity. Joe Thornton to the Sharks. November 30th, 2005. The Bruins traded their captain and franchise center in the middle of his prime. The return? Marco Sturm, Brad Stewart, Wayne Primo. 3 mid-level players, none of them game changers. Thornton went to San Jose and instantly exploded. He scored 92 points in 58 games. He won the Hart Trophy, the only player in NHL history to win league MVP after being traded mid-season. Over the next 15 years, Thornton became one of the NHL's top playmakers. More than 1,100 points with the Sharks, a culture-setting leader. Boston? They missed the playoffs. They gave up an MVP for nothing close in return. Tyler Seguin to the Stars, drafted 2nd overall in 2010. Stanley Cup winner as a rookie. By age 19, in just his 2nd season, he scored 67 points and looked like a future franchise center. Then, Boston gave up on him. In 2013, the Bruins traded Seguin to Dallas for Louis Eriksson, Riley Smith, Matt Fraser, and Joe Morrow. Why? Character concerns. Translation, he liked to party, and the Bruins didn't like it. But Dallas didn't care. Seguin immediately became a star. Multiple 70-plus point seasons, dynamic chemistry with Jamie Benn, and one of the league's most consistent offensive weapons for the next decade. Boston? Smith had 1 strong season, but was traded after 2. Eriksson was up and down. Morrow and Fraser? Non-factors. The Bruins gave up a young superstar because of personality clashes, and got 4 quarters for $1. Jarome Iginla to Calgary. This one goes all the way back to 1995. The Dallas Stars were in win-now mode and wanted veteran help for a playoff run. So they traded Corey Millen and an 18-year-old WHL prospect, a recent first-round pick named Jarome Iginla, to the Calgary Flames for Joe Nieuwendyk. At the time, it barely made headlines. Nieuwendyk was a proven scorer and helped Dallas win a Stanley Cup in 1999, so it wasn't a complete loss, but what Calgary got in return turned into a franchise legend. Iginla became the heart and soul of the Flames for over 15 years. A 2-time 50-goal scorer, over 600 career goals, 2 Rocket Richard trophies, an Olympic gold medalist, and one of the most respected leaders in modern NHL history. He captained Calgary to a Stanley Cup final in 2004, carried the offense for over a decade, and became one of the most beloved athletes in Canada. Dallas got short-term help. Calgary got a Hall of Famer before he ever played an NHL game. Zdeno Chara, plus 2nd overall pick for Yashin. June 2001. The Islanders made a blockbuster deal. They sent Zdeno Chara, Bill Muckalt, and the number 2 overall pick, which became Jason Spezza, to Ottawa for Alexei Yashin. The gamble? Catastrophic. Chara became a Norris Trophy winner, Stanley Cup captain, and future Hall of Famer. Spezza became a 90-point center, one of the most productive Senators of all time. Yashin? He put up numbers, but was never a leader. And that $87.5 million contract? It crippled the franchise. The Isles gave up 2 franchise pieces for a flashy name with no payoff. One of the most lopsided deals of the modern era. Philip Forsberg to Nashville. In 2013, the Washington Capitals made a deal they'd regret for the next decade. They traded Philip Forsberg, a first-round pick and top forward prospect, to the Nashville Predators. In return, Martin Erat, a 31-year-old winger past his prime, and Michael Latta, a depth piece. The Capitals were chasing a playoff push. Erat was supposed to be the veteran boost. Instead, he flopped. In 62 games, Erat scored just 2 goals and requested a trade the next season. Latta, a 4th liner who never stuck long-term. Forsberg, meanwhile, became everything the Caps were missing, a skilled, clutch winger. Multiple 30-goal seasons, franchise leader in goals, and the face of Nashville's offense for the next 10 years. It wasn't just a bad trade, it was one of the most lopsided prospect for veteran swaps in recent NHL history. And the Capitals got burned for a rental who never paid off. Taylor Hall for Adam Larson, 1 for 1. That's how this trade is remembered, and not in a good way. In 2016, the Edmonton Oilers traded Taylor Hall, a former #1 overall pick and elite winger, to the New Jersey Devils for Adam Larson, a stay-at-home defenseman. Hall exploded in New Jersey. He scored 93 points in 2018, carried the Devils into the playoffs, and won the Hart Trophy as league MVP. Larson, solid, but never more than a second-pair shutdown guy. Oilers fans were stunned. Even Hall said it himself. It's a tough pill to swallow. And it was. Edmonton gave up elite offense in exchange for grit and reliability. But in the modern NHL, that's not a fair trade. PK Subban for Shea Weber. June 2016, Montreal trades PK Subban to Nashville. Nashville trades Shea Weber to Montreal. A rare superstar for superstar deal. At first, people thought the Canadiens lost. Subban was younger, flashier, a former Norris winner. Weber was older, more physical, with a massive contract. But over time, the trade flipped. Subban declined fast. Within a few seasons, he was a shadow of his former self. By 2022, he was retired. Weber, despite injury issues, became the Canadiens' captain, defensive anchor, and led them to the Stanley Cup final in 2021. Not a total disaster, but Montreal traded flash for substance, and surprisingly, came out on top. Still, it was a risky swap, and it could have gone the other way. Mark Stone to the Golden Knights. In 2019, Ottawa traded their best player, again. Mark Stone, a Selke-caliber winger and heart of the franchise, was sent to the Golden Knights for Erik Brännström, Oscar Lindberg, and a second-round pick. Ottawa fans were told Brännström was the next Erik Karlsson. He wasn't. Meanwhile, Stone signed a long-term deal in Vegas, became captain, elite two-way forward, and the emotional leader of the locker room. Then, in 2023, he lifted the Stanley Cup. Ottawa traded a captain and playoff warrior for pieces that never panned out. The Senators lost a culture guy, and Vegas got a champion. Brett Hull to the Blues. In 1988, the Calgary Flames traded Brett Hull and Steve Bozek to St. Louis for Rob Ramage and Rick Wamsley. Ramage and Wamsley helped Calgary win the Cup in 1989, but Brett Hull became a generational sniper. He scored 86 goals in a single season, had 11 straight 30-plus goal seasons, and racked up over 700 career goals. He won the Hart Trophy in 1991 and became a Hall of Famer. Flames fans might say the Cup makes it worth it. But you don't just give up a 700 goal scorer for a depth defenseman and backup goalie. Adam Oates to St. Louis. Speaking of St. Louis, they fleeced another one. In 1989, the Red Wings traded Adam Oates and Paul McLean to the Blues for Bernie Federko and Tony McKegney. Federko was a legend, but he was nearing retirement. Oates, just getting started. He became one of the best passers in NHL history. Back-to-back 100-plus point seasons with Brett Hull on his wing. Over 1,400 career points, Hall of Fame. Detroit gave up a future superstar for short-term name value. A classic case of bad timing. Doug Gilmour to the Leafs, January 1992. The Calgary Flames pulled off what's now called the 10-player trade. They sent Doug Gilmour and 4 others to Toronto. In return, 5 players, none of whom made an impact. Gilmour became a Toronto legend. In 1992-93, he put up 127 points, won the Selke Trophy, and nearly led the Leafs to the Stanley Cup final. He was beloved, clutch, captain material. Calgary? Not one of the 5 players they got matched Gilmour's impact, a franchise-altering deal for the wrong franchise. Sergei Bobrovsky to Columbus. In 2012, the Philadelphia Flyers made a decision that would haunt them for years. They traded Sergei Bobrovsky, a 23-year-old with raw talent and starting potential, to the Columbus Blue Jackets for a second-round pick and 2 fourth-rounders. Why? Because they had just signed Ilya Bryzgalov to a massive $51 million contract and believed he was the long-term answer in net. He wasn't. Bryzgalov's time in Philly was defined by inconsistent play and off-ice distractions. Bobrovsky, meanwhile, exploded the moment he got a real shot in Columbus. In his first season as a starter, he won the Vezina Trophy. Then, he won another in 2017. He became one of the most athletic, high-ceiling goaltenders of the decade, routinely stealing games and posting elite numbers. After moving to Florida, he led the Panthers to 2 Stanley Cups, putting up one of the most dominant playoff stretches in recent memory. As for the Flyers, they've been through over a dozen goalies since the trade, and they're still looking for a true franchise starter. A classic case of giving up too early and watching greatness happen somewhere else. Ryan O'Reilly to Buffalo. In 2015, the Colorado Avalanche made a bold decision. They traded 24-year-old center Ryan O'Reilly, a key piece of their core, to the Buffalo Sabres. In return, Colorado received Nikita Zadorov, JT Compher, and Mikhail Grigorenko. At the time, it looked like a fair haul: size, youth, and potential. But none of the return pieces developed into stars. Zadorov was physical, but inconsistent. Grigorenko never stuck. Compher had flashes, but was more of a middle six grinder than a game changer. Meanwhile, O'Reilly just kept getting better. In Buffalo, he became a consistent 60-point two-way center, despite being on a struggling team. Then came the 2018 trade to St. Louis, and everything changed. He became the heartbeat of the Blues, leading by example with elite defensive play, face-off dominance, and clutch scoring. He won the Selke Trophy, the Conn Smythe Trophy, and helped deliver the Blues their first Stanley Cup in franchise history in 2019. O'Reilly wasn't just a great player, he was a culture changer, and Colorado let him go, right before he hit his prime. The Avs eventually bounced back and built a cup winner of their own. But this one still stinks, because Ryan O'Reilly was the kind of guy you build around, and they shipped him out too soon. Thomas Hertl to Vegas. In 2024, the San Jose Sharks pulled the trigger on a move that signaled a full-scale rebuild. They traded longtime fan favorite and top-line center Thomas Hertl to the Vegas Golden Knights, a team built to win now. In return, the Sharks received a 2025 first-round pick and prospect David Edstrom, a 2023 first-rounder with upside, but far from a sure thing. That was it. For Sharks fans, it was a gut punch. Hertl had been with the team for over a decade, a consistent 20 to 30 goal scorer, a locker room leader, and one of the last emotional links to the franchise's better years. Meanwhile, Hertl slotted seamlessly into Vegas's top six, adding scoring depth, experience, and exactly the kind of two-way center you need for a deep playoff run. And with term left on his contract, the Knights didn't just land a rental. They secured a piece for the long haul. San Jose, on the other hand, is left hoping Edstrom develops into something meaningful, and that the first-rounder lands. But if he doesn't, and if Vegas goes on another deep playoff tear, this deal could quickly join the list of painful rebuild misfires, the kind that keeps a team stuck in the basement for years. The 1994-95 lockout, the first big labor war. This was the first time the NHL ever actually lost games to a labor dispute, and it was ugly. For years, tension had been simmering. Owners claimed the league was bleeding money. Small market teams said they couldn't compete with big spenders in cities like New York or Toronto. Their solution? A salary cap. A hard limit on what teams could pay players, bringing cost certainty to the league. But the NHLPA wasn't having it. Led by Bob Goodenow, the players' union saw a cap as an existential threat. They argued the league's poor teams were simply mismanaged, that owners were crying poor while franchise values soared. For players, a cap meant limiting their freedom to negotiate fair market value. Negotiations turned toxic quickly. In October 1994, with no deal in sight, owners locked the players out. Training camps never opened. Preseason was canceled outright. Fans were left angry and confused. The lockout dragged on for months, with both sides trading insults in the press. Players accused owners of lying about their books. Owners warned that the league was on the brink of collapse. The league even floated trial balloons about canceling the entire season. And the financial pain was real. NHL gate revenue losses were estimated at $250 million, according to Forbes in 1995. Local economies in NHL cities lost $100 to $150 million. Bars, restaurants, hotels, and arena workers all felt it. Players tried to stay sharp in Europe, or barnstormed in charity games to keep the fans engaged. Meanwhile, broadcasters and sponsors threatened to walk away if there was no hockey. Finally, in January 1995, both sides blinked. They hammered out a last-minute deal to save some of the season, but it was a grudging compromise. No league-wide salary cap. But the NHL got a rookie salary cap to control skyrocketing entry-level contracts, maxing out at $1,075,000 for 1995 draftees, per ESPN. Slight tweaks to salary arbitration. A watered-down luxury tax system aimed at high-spending teams. It wasn't the ironclad cost control the owners had dreamed of, but it gave them something. The season was reduced to a 48-game sprint, with teams playing only within their own conference to squeeze in the games before summer. It felt rushed, uneven, and for many fans, unsatisfying. But it was hockey, and that was better than nothing. The 1994-95 lockout ended with deep scars. The two sides didn't trust each other any more than before. The fight over a true salary cap wasn't over. It was just delayed. And everyone in the sport knew it was only a matter of time before the next, even nastier showdown. The 2004-05 lockout, the lost season. This was the nuclear option. The lockout that killed an entire NHL season. It began on September 16, 2004, and dragged on for 310 days, ending only on July 22, 2005. It remains the longest labor stoppage in NHL history, and the first time a North American pro league lost an entire season to a labor dispute. Gary Bettman and the owners went all in on their biggest goal, implementing a hard salary cap. Their argument? The league was broken. They claimed player salaries had more than doubled over the previous decade, while revenues stagnated. Without cost certainty, they warned, small market teams would collapse, and the league would lose parity entirely. But the NHLPA wasn't buying it. Led by Bob Goodenow, the union argued this was a blatant cash grab. They accused the owners of hiding real financial data and refused to accept a cap that would limit a player earning power. Early in negotiations, the union even offered a 5% salary rollback on existing deals, a good faith gesture. But owners refused anything short of a cap. Negotiations were brutal. Neither side trusted the other. Meetings often devolved into shouting matches and blame games in front of the cameras. The media dubbed it hockey's civil war. As fall turned to winter, the NHL sat dark. Training camps were canceled. Arenas went silent. Players scattered to Europe or the minors to stay sharp. Fans were furious. They flooded call-in shows with rants and held protest rallies, especially in Canada, where the sport is woven into national identity. Toronto even saw organized demonstrations outside the NHL's offices, and the financial pain was staggering. The league lost over $2 billion in combined player salaries and team revenues. Local economies in NHL cities lost an estimated $200 to $300 million in spending. From bars and restaurants to arena staff and hotels, TV partners and sponsors bailed or threatened to, frustrated with the uncertainty. By January 2005, fans still clung to hope for a last-minute deal. Surely they wouldn't cancel the entire season. But on February 16, 2005, Bettman held a grim press conference. The entire season was officially canceled. Over 1,230 games gone. The Stanley Cup not awarded for the first time since the Spanish flu in 1919. The fallout was brutal. Editorials called it a black eye for hockey. Newspapers ran tombstones with the NHL's logo. Even die-hard fans questioned their loyalty. When the smoke cleared that summer, they finally reached a deal. And while many called it a win for the owners, it was more nuanced than that. A hard salary cap was implemented for the first time, but crucially, it was linked to league revenues, allowing it to grow as the game did. The cap started around $39 million in 2005-06, but would expand significantly over the next decade, hitting $64.3 million by 2011-12. The players accepted a 24% rollback on all existing contracts. Revenue-sharing mechanisms were introduced to help small market teams stay competitive. New rules limited salary arbitration and controlled entry-level contracts. Players retained significant free agency rights, preserving movement for veterans. It was a bitter compromise. Owners got cost certainty, but the NHLPA ensured the cap would rise with the sport's growth. And to win fans back, the league overhauled its on-ice products, shootouts to end ties and produce highlight moments. The end of the two-line pass rule to open up play, strict obstruction and hooking enforcement to free up skilled players and boost scoring. It worked, eventually. The game got faster, scoring rose, and fans came back, but the lockout left deep scars. It showed owners were willing to lose everything for their demands. It fractured the players' union leadership, and it reminded everyone, fans included, that in hockey, money can trump tradition in a heartbeat. Because in 2004-05, the NHL didn't just lose a season, it lost trust, and rebuilding that would take years. The 2012-13 lockout, the 50-50 fight. You'd think they'd learn, right? Nope. Just 7 years after losing an entire season, the NHL found itself right back at the table. This time, the dispute was about money again. By 2012, the salary cap system created after the 2005 lockout had actually worked. Maybe too well for the owner's taste. Hockey-related revenue, HRR, had exploded. The salary cap had risen from $39 million in 2005 to over $70 million. Players were getting 57% of HRR under the existing deal, and owners felt they were getting squeezed. Their goal? Cut the players' share to 50-50. Owners argued this was fair and sustainable. They pointed to other leagues like the NFL and NBA, which had recently hammered out similar revenue splits. But players felt burned. They'd already accepted a 24% rollback and a hard cap in 2005. Now, the league was asking for more, even as revenues boomed. Negotiations turned into a stare-down. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman faced off against new NHLPA head Donald Fair, who'd famously led the MLBPA through labor wars in baseball. Fair wasn't going to fold easily. Talks quickly turned hostile. Owners proposed contract term limits, restrictions on front-loaded deals that circumvented the cap, and a longer CBA. Players countered with revenue-sharing models to help weaker teams without cutting their own slice. Meanwhile, the season sat in limbo. The league locked out the players on September 15, 2012. Training camps, gone. Preseason, canceled. One of the most painful casualties was the Winter Classic, scheduled for January 1st, 2013 at Michigan Stadium, the Big House. It was hyped as the NHL's marquee outdoor event, with over 100,000 fans expected. Canceling it wasn't just a financial loss, tens of millions in ticket sales and TV revenue, but a PR disaster. Fans were furious. Many felt betrayed all over again. Cities lost out on local business. Broadcasters had to fill empty slots. Players scattered to Europe or sat waiting. Talks broke down repeatedly. Deadlines came and went. Bettman and Fair traded public barbs, blaming each other for destroying the game. At one point, the players even voted to give their union the power to disclaim interest, effectively dissolving the NHLPA to launch legal challenges. Finally, the pressure cracked both sides. Facing the total loss of another season, marathon negotiations in early January 2013 produced a deal. Key terms: 50-50 revenue split. Players' share dropped from 57%, saving owners hundreds of millions over the CBA term. Contract term limits. Maximum 7 years for new deals, 8 if re-signing with the same team, to stop the 17-year Kovalchuk-style contracts. Salary variance limits. No year-to-year jumps over 35% to stop cap circumventing front-loading. Improved revenue sharing to help smaller markets remain viable under the cap system. The lockout ended on January 6, 2013, after 119 days, but the season was severely scarred. The NHL squeezed in a 48-game sprint that started in mid-January. No preseason, no interconference games, just relentless conference-only matchups to fit in a schedule before summer. Fans were exhausted and angry, but they came back. TV ratings rebounded, arenas filled, because at the end of the day, they just wanted hockey. The NHL framed the deal as ensuring long-term stability, locking in labor, peace until 2022, and later extended to 2026 after the Rona pause. I can't say the full word here. Players accepted it grudgingly, knowing they'd given up share but secured fairer contract rules. But the legacy of the 2012-13 lockout? It cemented the NHL's reputation as a league willing to cancel games, even marquee events like the Winter Classic, to win financial concessions. And it left everyone wondering, after 3 lockouts in less than 20 years, could hockey ever stop fighting over money? Other labor disputes. It wasn't just lockouts that defined the NHL's messy labor history. Before any lockout ever shut down training camps or canceled entire seasons, there was the league's first major labor stoppage, the 1992 NHLPA strike. This was historic. It was the first time NHL players had ever walked out on the league, and they didn't pick the offseason or a sleepy part of the schedule. It exploded right before the playoffs, the absolute worst moment for the league to face a shutdown. Tensions had been building for years. The players felt they weren't getting their fair share, especially when it came to licensing revenue. Money from trading cards, posters, video games, and other merchandise featuring their names and faces. They also felt the playoff bonuses were outdated, far too low given how much money playoff games brought in. In early April 1992, with only a week left in the regular season, the NHLPA, under new executive director Bob Goodenow, voted overwhelmingly to strike. It was a bold, risky move. The league was caught off guard. Fans were angry. About 30 games were canceled in total. Roughly 3% of the 1991 to 92 season's 840 games. The regular season was cut slightly short, adding real scheduling headaches. Team owners and league executives scrambled. While regular season gate revenue was crucial for the league, the playoffs were especially lucrative. Ticket prices were higher, games were near sellouts, and broadcast interest surged. Losing the playoffs would have been a disaster for everyone. The strike lasted 10 tense days. The rhetoric was heated. Both sides knew the optics were terrible. Risking the cup playoffs over off-ice money fights was an easy villain narrative in the press. But the players didn't blink, and ultimately, they won real concessions. A significant increase in playoff bonuses, better rewarding the grind and revenue of postseason play. A larger, guaranteed share of licensing revenue, ensuring players were fairly compensated when their images and names were used. An agreement to keep addressing player-friendly issues in the next collective bargaining talks. The strike ended on April 10, 1992, just in time to save the playoffs. Fans exhaled, the Stanley Cup was awarded, and hockey continued. But the relationship between the union and the league was fundamentally changed. It left a lasting scar. Owners learned the NHLPA was willing to take the nuclear option, even right before the playoffs. Players, empowered by the win, proved they could hold together and force real change. In many ways, the 1992 strike set the tone for every ugly labor fight that came after. It didn't cancel a season, but it showed that labor unrest was here to stay in the NHL. And it revealed the deep distrust that would keep resurfacing in the brutal lockouts of 1994 to 95, 2004 to 5, and 2012 to 13. The NHL's labor history is a story of money, power, and distrust. Bettman's era has been marked by pushing for owner control. Even at the cost of lost seasons, the players' union has fought back but given ground, especially on salary caps and revenue splits. Every lockout left scars. Fans lost trust, cities lost revenue, players lost prime years. The 2004 to 5 lockout especially forced changes that reshaped the league's economics forever. Today, labor peace is more stable, for now. The NHL and NHLPA extended their collective bargaining agreement through 2026 after Rona disrupted the schedule. But memories of those lost seasons still haunt the league. Because if there's one thing hockey fans know too well, a lockout can kill an entire season overnight. And even years later, it still feels like the dumbest way to solve a fight over money. Patrick Waugh tells the Canadiens he's done, mid-game. December 2nd, 1995. The Canadiens are getting humiliated at home by the Detroit Red Wings. The Forum crowd is restless, booing every goal. Patrick Waugh, one of the greatest goalies of all time, is left in net to absorb the beating, 9 goals against. He's furious. He's glaring at his own bench. Mario Tremblay, the rookie head coach, refuses to pull him for what feels like an eternity. The relationship between them is already toxic. This is gasoline on the fire. When Tremblay finally yanks him, Waugh doesn't even look at him. He storms past the bench, walks directly behind the players, straight to Canadiens president Ronald Corey during the game. In front of a sold-out crowd and live TV cameras, Waugh leans in and says, "This is my last game in Montreal." He wasn't bluffing. The locker room is in chaos after the game. The press is everywhere. Days later, the Canadiens trade their superstar goalie and team captain Mike Keane to Colorado for a handful of players who never come close to replacing them. Roy lands in Denver, where he immediately transforms the Avalanche into a powerhouse, winning 2 more Stanley Cups and a Conn Smythe. Montreal never recovers. The Waugh trade marks the end of their dynasty and the beginning of 2 decades of futility. It wasn't just a bad game, it was a franchise-altering meltdown, an infamous divorce, and to this day, it feels like something out of a scripted sports tragedy. Even now, Canadiens fans call it the day everything changed. The 2012 Penguins-Flyers series Brawl Fest. It's Game 3 of the Eastern Conference quarterfinals. The rivalry is already vicious. 2 Pennsylvania teams that hate each other, and the series is loaded with bad blood before the puck even drops. The Penguins are desperate after dropping the first 2 games. The Flyers want to bury them. Then the game just detonates. Fights break out before the first period is even over. Scrums after every whistle. Sticks in faces, gloves flying. Insults that make even the mics crackle. Sidney Crosby and Claude Giroux, the 2 stars, are jawing non-stop. Crosby gets into it with Scott Hartnell, shoves Jakub Voracek's glove away at the face-off circle, like a little brother move, sparking another melee. Craig Adams actually yanks Hartnell's hair in a scrum. Chris Letang drops the gloves with Kimmo Timonen. Yes, the calm, veteran defenseman Kimmo Timonen. Even the goalies, Marc-Andre Fleury and Ilya Bryzgalov, skate to center ice like they're going to fight, to the crowd's absolute delight. The penalties are out of control, 158 minutes handed out in a single game. The refs basically lose all authority. The benches are screaming, the fans are standing the whole time, roaring. Analysts don't even try to call it normal playoff hockey. It's described as pure chaos, a circus, pro wrestling on ice. Philadelphia wins 8-4. They don't just humiliate Pittsburgh on the scoreboard, they break them mentally. Even today, the highlights look fake, like a scripted WWE segment where someone forgot to tell the refs to stop it. It's one of the most unhinged, unforgettable, and downright absurd playoff games in NHL history. The goalie interference controversy, 2017, Western Conference Final, Game 4, Ducks vs. Predators. The series is 2-1 Nashville, so this game is massive. Anaheim needs it to even things up before heading home. Bridgestone Arena is electric. Predators fans can practically taste their first Stanley Cup final, and the atmosphere is deafening. Midway through the second period, chaos erupts in front of the Nashville net. The Ducks force a messy scramble. Ryan Kessler ends up deep in the blue paint, practically wrestling with Pekka Rinne. On the replay, it's obvious. Kessler's glove is clamped on Rinne's pad, pinning it down. Rinne is completely trapped, unable to move. The puck squirts free and slides into the net. Anaheim celebrates wildly, thinking they've tied it. Immediately, Nashville players explode at the refs. Rinne is livid, gesturing furiously at Kessler. The crowd rains down boos. The Jumbotron replays it over and over, showing Kessler's hand locked on the goalie's pad. The refs huddle and head to the monitor. The review feels endless, almost 10 minutes of examining every angle, zooming in on the crease battle. Broadcasters are frozen, dissecting the frame-by-frame evidence. Anaheim's bench is tense. Nashville's is seething. Finally, the refs emerge. They wave it off. No goal. Goalie interference. Bridgestone erupts in cheers. The Predators bang their sticks in approval. The Ducks argue furiously, but it's over. The call stands. It's a pivotal swing in a brutally even game. Anaheim never gets that goal back. The game goes to overtime, and Nashville wins it in OT to take a 3-1 series lead. The building is shaking. The Predators move to within one win of their first ever Stanley Cup final. Even after the right call, the moment is instantly notorious. Ducks fans insist Kessler was pushed in. Nashville fans say it's the most blatant interference ever caught on tape. Analysts argue for days about how the NHL's interference rules are impossible to interpret consistently. The outcry was so loud it helped force the league to revisit and clarify its goalie interference review procedures in the offseason. Even now, this clip is Exhibit A when fans debate what actually counts as interference. It's one of those classic, messy, high-stakes playoff controversies that feels like it was written for a movie, and only hockey could deliver it. Steve Yzerman's Double OT Rocket. 1996 playoffs, Western Conference semifinals. Blues vs. Red Wings. Game 7. Winner moves on, loser goes home. It's everything you want in playoff hockey. Two loaded teams, one epic showdown. Joe Louis Arena is packed, fans on their feet for hours, living and dying with every shift. Detroit is desperate to shake years of underachieving. Their roster is stacked. Steve Yzerman, Sergei Fedorov, Nicholas Lidstrom, Igor Larionov. This team was built to win a cup. St. Louis is no slouch either. Chris Pronger, Al McInnes, and Wayne Gretzky himself, who'd been traded there at the deadline for exactly this kind of high-stakes game. The game is a battle of wills. Regulation, no goals after the first. First overtime, nothing. Every shift is pure tension. Goalies Chris Osgood and John Casey play out of their minds. Every fan is standing, clutching whatever they can find. Then, double overtime. Exhaustion everywhere. One mistake, and your season is over. Steve Yzerman picks up the puck at center ice, skating with the calm of a man who's decided the outcome himself. He crosses the blue line with Gretzky trailing him. No deke, no setup, just raw decisiveness. He winds up from way out and absolutely unloads. The slap shot is a rocket. Top corner, glove side, under the bar. John Casey has no chance. The red light blazes. Game over. Season over. Joe Louis Arena erupts. The Red Wings bench clears, piling onto their captain. Yzerman is screaming, arms raised, consumed by relief and triumph. And Gretzky? The great one just skates off quietly, head down. Even he knows there's no answer for a goal that perfect. It was the defining moment of Yzerman's career up to that point. A captain dragging his team forward with pure will. It didn't win them the cup that year, they'd lose in the conference final to Colorado. But that goal became a turning point in the franchise's culture. The next season, Detroit roared back and finally won it all in 1997, ending decades of frustration. Even today, they show the clip at Little Caesars Arena like a holy moment. Yzerman winding up, the puck ripping into the net, the roof nearly blowing off. It wasn't just a Game 7 winner, it was the Game 7 winner, an iconic snapshot of everything that makes playoff hockey the most dramatic sport on earth. The 2014 Sochi Shootout, TJ Oshie Heroics, Sochi Olympics, February 15, 2014, USA versus Russia. It's a round-robin game, but you wouldn't know it by the atmosphere. This wasn't some throwaway preliminary match. It was USA versus Russia in Russia, with the home crowd packed in, flags waving, and the entire country watching. Even Vladimir Putin sat in the stands, stone-faced, eyes locked on the ice. Regulation was pure tension. Both teams played fast, physical, desperate hockey. The Russians thought they had a late go-ahead goal on a power play, but it was controversially disallowed because the net was off its moorings. A call that left the arena seething. Overtime solved nothing, so it went to the shootout, a perfect cinematic setup for Olympic drama. IIHF rules allowed repeated shooters after the first 3 rounds. Team USA looked at their bench, saw TJ Oshie, not the biggest star on the roster, but a shootout specialist, and put their entire hopes on his shoulders. And Oshie delivered in legendary fashion. He scored, then again, and again, and again. He went 4 for 6 overall, each move different. Quick release, 5-hole, backhand, high glove. The crowd, once deafening, fell into a nervous hush between rounds. Even the cameras lingered on Putin's frozen expression as the tension grew. Meanwhile, the American bench was buzzing in disbelief. Teammates watched him go out again and again, some laughing in awe, others too tense to speak. Even the broadcasters couldn't believe what they were seeing, calling it an instant Olympic classic. When Oshie finally sealed it, giving Team USA a 3-2 win, his teammates swarmed him in celebration, while Russian fans looked on in stunned silence. It didn't eliminate Russia, they would advance too, but it did secure Team USA a critical bye, straight to the quarterfinals, avoiding an extra elimination game and boosting their medal hopes. The clip went instantly viral around the world. Social media lit up with chants of TJ USA. Even back home, he was interviewed endlessly. Ever humble, he insisted the real heroes were wearing military uniforms, not hockey gear, but everyone knew he'd given the US an unforgettable Olympic moment. It felt like a Hollywood script, a no-name hero in enemy territory, single-handedly silencing the home crowd with ice in his veins. Even today, if you watch the shootout highlights, it still gives you chills. It wasn't just a game, it was one of the greatest, most improbable performances in Olympic hockey history. Matt Duchene's miles offside goal. February 19, 2013, Predators versus Avalanche in Nashville. A regular season game without playoff stakes, but it produced one of the most infamous blown calls in NHL history. Midway through the first period, Colorado pushes up the ice. The puck is sent forward, but Matt Duchene mistimes his entry completely. He's not just a step ahead, he's easily 3 feet offside. His skates are well over the Nashville blue line before the puck even crosses. It's so blatant, the entire building reacts. Predators defensemen throw their arms up immediately. The crowd is already booing. Everyone sees it, except the linesman. No whistle. Play continues. Duchene actually hesitates for a moment, clearly expecting the play to be blown dead. When nothing happens, he shrugs, collects the puck all alone, and skates in on Chris Mason. He roofs it. Goal. The Bridgestone Arena erupts, but not in cheers. Fans are howling in outrage. The Predators' bench is furious, screaming at the officials. Mason is looking at the ref in disbelief, pointing at the blue line like, "Come on, man!" Duchene himself can't even hide it. He flashes this guilty, sheepish grin during the celebration that practically says, "Yeah, I know." Then they show the replay on the Jumbotron. It's humiliatingly clear. Duchene is miles offside, basically on a breakaway before the puck even enters the zone. The boos get even louder. The commentators don't even try to sugarcoat it. They're openly laughing, calling it one of the worst missed offsides ever seen. Colorado's bench looked sheepish too, like they couldn't believe they'd gotten away with it. Even Duchenne later admitted he knew he was offside. The NHL was mortified. That single clip became Exhibit A in the push to bring in video review for offside. It wasn't just a borderline call, it was so outrageous it turned the entire rulebook into a punchline for one night. Sports networks replayed it on loop as a cautionary tale. Coaches and GMs pointed to it in league meetings to demand change, and change came. The NHL introduced coaches' challenges specifically to catch these kinds of blown calls. Today, whenever fans complain about offside reviews slowing down the game, someone inevitably posts that Duchenne clip. It's the perfect reminder of why video review exists. Because without it, you can get a goal so obviously comically offside, it looks like a glitch in real life. The St. Louis Blues, going from last place to Stanley Cup. January 3rd, 2019. The St. Louis Blues are dead last in the entire NHL, rock bottom. The season looks over. Fans are demanding trades. Coaches are getting fired. Nobody is talking playoffs, let alone the Stanley Cup. Then it happens. Rookie goalie Jordan Binnington gets called up. He starts playing out of his mind. The team rallies around him. Coach Craig Berube pushes all the right buttons. The locker room gets focused, and the Blues go on one of the most insane second-half runs in NHL history. They climb all the way from last to third in their division. They make the playoffs, and they just keep going. They knock out the high-powered Winnipeg Jets. Then, they survive a brutal, grinding series against Dallas that goes to double overtime in Game 7, at home in St. Louis. Pat Maroon, the local kid, tips in the winner and sends the Enterprise Center into absolute chaos. Next up, the San Jose Sharks. The Blues out at them, outwork them, and wear them down to take the Western Conference title. And in the Stanley Cup final, they face the mighty Boston Bruins, Game 7. On the road. TD Garden is a cauldron of noise and history, but the Blues don't blink. Binnington stands on his head with save after save. Ryan O'Reilly scores again and cements his Conn Smythe case. When the final horn sounds, the St. Louis Blues, who were dead last in January, are Stanley Cup champions for the first time in their 52-year history. It sounds like a Disney movie. Even now, people watch the playoff montage and shake their heads. From hopeless to unstoppable in 6 months. A story so unlikely it feels fake every single time you see it replayed. The Ron Hextall goalie goal, December 8th, 1987. The Spectrum in Philadelphia. Flyers versus Bruins. It's late in the game. Boston pulls their goalie for the extra attacker, desperate to tie it up. The Bruins try to set up in the zone, but the puck squirts free toward Ron Hextall, and instead of freezing it or rim wrapping it around the boards like any sane goalie would, he winds up and absolutely launches it. A full-on shot down the length of the ice. The puck glides perfectly, untouched, all the way into the empty net. Goal. Scored by the goalie himself. The Spectrum erupts. Flyers players pour off the bench like they just won Game 7. Hextall throws his arms in the air, grinning like a madman. It wasn't some accidental lob or lucky clearance. It was a planned, confident, dead center rocket, making him the first goalie in NHL history to actually shoot and score a goal. Watching it even now feels fake. Goalies were supposed to be statues in their crease, not gunners firing 200-foot precision shots. And this wasn't a one-off. Hextall did it again in the 1989 playoffs, sealing another win with an empty net goal. But that first one? That's the moment that changed goalie lore forever. It was the hockey equivalent of a pitcher hitting a grand slam. Even today, seeing a goalie wind up and rifle the puck into the net feels like a video game glitch. Because Ron Hextall didn't just stop the puck, he scored. And it was so outrageous it still doesn't seem real decades later. Two-way forward. The two-way forward is one of the most complete and reliable types of hockey players. Their role is simple in concept, but incredibly demanding in practice. Contribute on offense while being just as effective defensively. Unlike a pure sniper or playmaker who focuses mostly on one end of the ice, the two-way forward is trusted to do it all. Defensively, two-way forwards are often matched against the other team's top players. They're responsible for shutting down star opponents, breaking up plays in the neutral zone, and killing penalties. They win face-offs in crucial moments, back-check hard to prevent odd-man rushes, and make smart reads to disrupt passing lanes. Coaches love them because they're dependable. When the game is on the line, you want a two-way forward on the ice. Offensively, they're versatile. While they may not always lead the team in goals, they chip in with timely scoring, smart passing, and the ability to create chances out of nothing. They aren't flashy like pure snipers, but they know how to produce when it matters most. That balance between scoring and defending makes them indispensable, especially in playoff hockey, where every mistake can end a season. There are different styles of two-way forwards. Some lean more defensive, excelling in faceoffs, penalty killing, and shutting down the opposition. Others lean slightly more offensive, using their defensive awareness to create turnovers that lead directly to scoring chances. But the best two-way forwards are the ones who combine both, steady in their own end, dangerous in the other. Historically, some of hockey's biggest names have thrived in this role. Bob Gainey of the Montreal Canadiens was one of the first to make defense from a forward position into an art form, winning 4 straight Selke trophies in the 1970s, and showing that a forward's value wasn't just in points. Steve Yzerman, who began his career as a pure scorer, reinvented himself in the 1990s into an elite two-way center under Scotty Bowman, a shift that helped Detroit become a dynasty. Pavel Datsyuk added a touch of magic to the role, earning the nickname the Magic Man for his dazzling stick handling, while also becoming one of the most feared defensive forwards in the league. In the modern NHL, Patrice Bergeron became the gold standard. He wasn't the flashiest, but his intelligence, face-off dominance, and all-around game made him a legend. Bergeron won 6 Selke trophies, more than anyone in history, and captained the Boston Bruins with a quiet but commanding presence. Alexander Barkov of the Florida Panthers has carried that torch in today's game, big, skilled, and capable of shutting down anyone while still putting up strong offensive numbers. The beauty of the two-way forward is that they don't always make the highlight reel, but they make winning possible. They're the players who block the last-minute shot, score the clutch goal, and never cheat the game on either end of the ice. In short, the two-way forward is the heartbeat of a hockey team, reliable, balanced, and absolutely essential to championship success. Power forward. The power forward is one of hockey's most feared and respected archetypes. They combine size, strength, and skill in a way that makes them nearly unstoppable when they're at their best. Unlike a pure sniper who thrives on finesse and precision, the power forward brings a physical edge to scoring. They drive to the net with authority, bulldoze through defenders, and score the gritty goals that come from sheer determination as much as raw talent. What defines the power forward is presence. When they're on the ice, you know it. They finish every check, win puck battles along the boards, and make defensemen pay a price for trying to stop them. But they're not just hitters. The true power forward has the hands to capitalize on those battles, turning rebounds, deflections, and net front scrums into goals. Their mix of intimidation and offensive production makes them a nightmare matchup because defenders can't simply outmuscle or outskill them. There are different styles of power forwards. Some are pure wrecking balls, overwhelming defenders with size and aggression. Others have a more balanced game, using their physicality to open space but also possessing a sniper's release or a playmaker's vision. The rarest are those who can dominate in every way, score 40 goals, deliver punishing hits, and set the tone for an entire team. Historically, Cam Neely of the Boston Bruins was one of the first to define the modern version of the role. Neely had a booming shot and the toughness to back it up, paving the way for a generation of big, skilled wingers. Eric Lindros took it even further in the 1990s, blending a massive 6'4" frame with elite scoring touch. Lindros could outmuscle opponents in the corners, flatten them with open ice hits, and then score highlight reel goals, often in the same shift. In the 2000s, Jarome Iginla embodied everything a power forward should be. He was the emotional leader of the Calgary Flames, piling up goals and penalty minutes while also earning universal respect across the league. Keith Tkachuk was another prototype, combining toughness with goal scoring in St. Louis and Phoenix. Today, Alex Ovechkin is the most famous example of the power forward's evolution. While known as one of the greatest snipers of all time, his physicality has always been a huge part of his game. Few players hit as hard or as often as Ovechkin, while also scoring at historic rates. Tom Wilson of the Capitals is another modern version, a player who hits like an enforcer, but can also score 20+ goals a season. The power forward may not dominate the game the way they did in the 90s, as today's NHL emphasizes speed and finesse, but their impact remains undeniable. In the playoffs especially, when space disappears and battles are won in the trenches, the power forward's ability to combine brute force with scoring touch often makes the difference. In short, the power forward is hockey's wrecking ball with a scoring touch. They bring intimidation, grit, and goals in one package. When you have a true power forward on your side, you don't just play hockey, you play with an edge that few teams can handle. Sniper. The sniper is the purest form of goal scorer in hockey. Their job is simple to describe, but incredibly hard to execute. Put the puck in the back of the net. While other players might grind along the boards, create plays, or focus on defense, the sniper lives for scoring opportunities. They thrive on anticipation, timing, and above all, a deadly shot. What separates a sniper from an ordinary scorer is efficiency. They don't need many chances. One look at the net and the puck is gone, often before the goalie even realizes it. Snipers have an arsenal of weapons, booming slap shots, quick one-timers, deceptive wrist shots, and lightning-fast releases that beat even the best goaltenders clean. Their ability to find soft spots in the defense, drifting into open space at just the right moment, is as important as their shooting mechanics. There are different types of snipers. Some live on the power play, setting up on the circle and unloading one-timers, like Alex Ovechkin with his legendary office on the left side. Others are more opportunistic, thriving on quick snapshots in traffic or finding rebounds in the slot. Then there are long-range specialists, players whose wrist shots are so accurate and fast that goalies struggle even when they see the puck coming. Regardless of the style, the defining trait is confidence. Snipers shoot first, and they don't hesitate. Historically, few names stand taller than Mike Bossy. In the 1980s, Bossy redefined what it meant to be a consistent scorer, notching 9 straight seasons with at least 50 goals. Brett Hull carried the torch in the 1990s, unleashing a blistering one-timer that made him one of the most feared shooters of his era. Pavel Bure, the Russian Rocket, combined speed and a lethal shot to become a nightmare for goalies, often scoring on breakaways and rushes that no one else could finish. In the modern era, the definition of the sniper has evolved, but the essence remains the same. Alex Ovechkin is perhaps the most iconic example, climbing the all-time goals list with a shot so unstoppable it has become predictable, and yet no one can consistently defend it. Austin Matthews has added a new twist, blending a quick, deceptive release with pinpoint accuracy that fools goalies from anywhere in the offensive zone. David Pastrnak and Nikita Kucherov are other prime examples, players who can tilt a game with a single flick of the wrists. Snipers aren't just about goals though. Their presence changes how teams defend. Opponents have to mark them closely, which opens space for their line mates. Even when they don't score, their reputation creates opportunities for others. But when the game is tied late, or when a team desperately needs offense, it's the sniper everyone looks to. In short, the sniper is hockey's ultimate weapon. They combine skill, instinct, and killer instinct in front of goal. They don't always backcheck like a two-way forward, or throw hits like a grinder. But when the moment comes, they deliver the most valuable thing in hockey: goals. Playmaker. The playmaker is the artist of hockey. Their canvas is the ice and their brush is the stick. While snipers finish plays, playmakers create them. Their greatest weapon isn't a booming shot or bone-crushing hit, it's vision. A playmaker sees the game one step, sometimes 2 steps ahead of everyone else. They're the ones threading impossible passes through traffic, holding onto the puck until the perfect lane opens, and making teammates look better simply by sharing the ice with them. What defines a playmaker is creativity. Some are patient, slowing the game down until defenses collapse, while others rely on quick, deceptive passes that catch opponents off guard. The best playmakers have a sixth sense for space, knowing not only where their line mates are, but where they're going to be. They manipulate defenders, draw attention, and then release the puck at the exact moment it creates the biggest chance. There are different styles of playmakers. Some, like Wayne Gretzky, dominated with anticipation and flawless passing, turning routine plays into highlight reels. Others, like Joe Thornton, use size and patience, shielding the puck until they found an open man. Then there are flashy playmakers like Mitch Marner, who combine slick hands with unbelievable vision, creating chances out of thin air. Whether they're dishing a saucer pass across the crease or a no-look feed through a defender's legs, playmakers specialize in the unexpected. But being a playmaker isn't just about assists. It's about controlling the rhythm of the game. The great ones dictate tempo, deciding when to speed things up and when to slow them down. They're the link between defense and offense, the players who turn a harmless breakout into a scoring opportunity with one pass. Their influence is often subtle. They may not score the goal, but they started the chain reaction that made it possible. Historically, Gretzky is the ultimate example. He holds records for assists that may never be touched, proving how much he elevated those around him. Adam Oates was another classic playmaker, racking up over 1,000 assists by always finding the open man. Peter Forsberg added physicality to the role, combining elite passing with strength that allowed him to control games in a different way. In today's NHL, Connor McDavid embodies the modern playmaker, blending blazing speed with vision to create chances almost at will. Sidney Crosby, while known as a complete player, has long been an elite passer, especially on the power play. Artemi Panarin is another prime example, using deceptive skating and pinpoint accuracy to rack up assists season after season. Playmakers may not always get the glory of the final goal, but ask any sniper or power forward, they're often the reason that goal even happened. They unlock defenses, change the flow of games, and bring a creativity that can't be coached. In short, the playmaker is the heartbeat of offense, turning opportunity into artistry symmetry, and ensuring that hockey is not just a battle, but a game of beauty. Agitator. The agitator is hockey's ultimate disruptor. Their job isn't to score goals or shut down top lines. It's to get under the skin of the opponent and throw them off their game. Agitators are the pests, the players who chirp endlessly, deliver sneaky cross-checks, slash ankles when the ref isn't looking, and generally make life miserable for whoever they're up against. They thrive on chaos, and if the other team is frustrated, distracted, or taking penalties, the agitator has done their job. What defines an agitator is relentlessness. They're always buzzing, always yapping, and always in the middle of scrums after the whistle. They're not necessarily the biggest hitters, but they know how to annoy. A shove here, a jab there, a perfectly timed taunt. When emotions are high, opponents hate playing against them, but teammates love having them around because agitators draw penalties, tilt momentum, and create space for star players by getting opponents focused on the wrong things. There are different styles of agitators. Some are pure pests, skating limited minutes, but maximizing their impact by constantly irritating opponents. Others add some offensive punch, combining agitation with timely goals to make themselves even more dangerous. The most effective agitators are those who can play regular shifts, getting under the opponent's skin while also contributing enough on the scoresheet to stay relevant. Historically, agitators have been a part of the NHL for decades. From Ty Domi to Ken Linseman, nicknamed the Rat, was one of the originals, notorious for his chirping and antics in the 1980s. Esa Tikkanen became famous for shadowing stars and driving them crazy, with a mix of physical play and Tikkanen's trash talk that no one could fully understand. In the 90s and early 2000s, Claude Lemieux perfected the role. Not only did he infuriate opponents, but he scored clutch playoff goals, earning a reputation as one of the most hated and most effective players of his era. In the modern NHL, Brad Marchand has become the face of the agitator role. Known for licking opponents' faces, slew-footing, and chirping constantly, he's been despised by rivals and adored in Boston. The difference with Marchand is that he combines agitation with elite skill, regularly putting up all-star level points while still driving opponents to madness. Other skills agitators include players like Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, who blends skill with grit and chirping. In today's NHL, agitators who can score goals are in really high demand. That's what a team needs to win the Stanley Cup. The agitators' value lies in the intangibles. They don't win scoring titles or Selke trophies, but they swing momentum in subtle ways. They can bait a superstar into taking a penalty, spark a rivalry with one annoying play, or draw an entire building's attention to themselves while their team capitalizes. Coaches often defend them because, while risky, the psychological edge they create can be game-changing, especially in the playoffs. In short, the agitator is hockey's villain. They're the player you hate, unless they're on your team. They thrive on boos from the crowd, smirks from the penalty box, and frustration on the other bench. Love them or despise them, agitators remind us that hockey isn't just physical and skillful, it's also mental. Enforcer. The enforcer is one of hockey's most iconic and controversial player types. Their role was never about scoring goals or setting up plays. It was about intimidation, protection, and making sure opponents thought twice before taking liberties with teammates. If a star player got hit too hard, or an opponent started getting chippy, the enforcer was there to respond. Their job was simple: enforce respect on the ice. Enforcers usually played on the fourth line, logging limited minutes, but their presence carried weight far beyond their ice time. Just knowing an enforcer was on the bench could change the way opponents played. They dropped the gloves to defend teammates, delivered crushing body checks, and created a physical edge that could tilt momentum. The message was clear: if you hurt one of us, you answer to him. There were different styles of enforcers. Some were pure fighters, known more for their fists than their hockey skills. Others were power enforcers, players who could fight but also contribute with hits, forechecking, or the occasional goal. The rarest type was the skilled enforcer, someone who could handle themselves in a scrap but also play meaningful minutes higher in the lineup. Regardless of style, their main purpose was the same: protect and intimidate. Historically, enforcers became a staple of the game in the 1970s during the era of the Broad Street Bullies. Dave the Hammer Schultz of the Philadelphia Flyers set the tone, racking up over 400 penalty minutes in a season, while helping his team win 2 Stanley Cups. In the 1980s and 90s, fighters like Bob Probert and Marty McSorley became legends for their toughness, often squaring off in heavyweight bouts that were as anticipated as the goals. Georges Laraque brought a mix of size, strength, and surprising skating ability, earning respect as one of the most feared fighters of the 2000s. But the role of the enforcer has declined in the modern NHL. Rule changes, a faster pace of play, and increased awareness about concussions have made staged fights far less common. Today's game emphasizes speed, skill, and discipline, leaving less room for players whose main contribution is fighting. Instead, teams value physical forwards who can hit and agitate, but also skate and score, players who bring toughness without being a liability. Still, the legacy of the enforcer is undeniable. For decades, they were folk heroes to fans and beloved by teammates. They created space for stars, lifted arenas with a single fight, and embodied the gladiatorial spirit of hockey. Even though pure enforcers are rare today, the memories of those who defined the role from from Schultz to Probert to Larocque live on in highlight reels and fan nostalgia. In short, the enforcer may not be as visible in today's NHL, but their impact shaped the culture of the sport for generations. They were the protectors, the intimidators, and the warriors who ensured that hockey was never just a game of skill, but also a game of grit and toughness. Shutdown defenseman. The shutdown defenseman is the classic protector of hockey. While offensive defensemen look to push the play and rack up points, the shutdown defenseman focuses on one thing above all else: keeping the puck out of their own net. Their role is simple in theory, but it requires toughness, intelligence, and sacrifice. They're the ones blocking shots, winning board battles, clearing the crease, and neutralizing the opponent's best forwards. What defines a shutdown defenseman is reliability. Coaches trust them in high-pressure moments, the final minute of a one-goal game, the penalty kill, or defending against the other team's top line. They may not show up often on the scoresheet, but they earn their value by preventing goals rather than scoring them. A great shutdown defenseman reads the game well, knows when to step up with a hit, and when to stay patient and cut off passing lanes. There are a few different shades of shutdown defensemen. Some are physical, using size and strength to dominate in front of the net and along the boards. Think of a player who clears bodies from the crease and makes life miserable for opposing forwards. Others are more positional, not as flashy with hits, but always in the right place at the right time, making the game look simple by denying space. The very best combine both, intimidating physically, but also smart enough to minimize mistakes. Historically, some of the NHL's most respected blue liners built their reputations as shutdown defensemen. Rod Langway, often called the Secretary of Defense, won the Norris Trophy not by scoring points, but by making sure opponents never did. Scott Stevens became legendary for his crushing hits and ability to shut down entire lines during the New Jersey Devils dynasty years. In more recent times, players like Rob Scuderi and Willie Mitchell embodied the role for Stanley Cup champions, doing the quiet, thankless work that lets stars shine. In today's NHL, shutdown defensemen still matter, even as the game has become faster and more skill-driven. Adam Larson of the Seattle Kraken, Jacob Slavin of the Carolina Hurricanes, and Jonas Brodin of the Minnesota Wild all serve as modern examples, players who don't get headlines for highlight reel goals, but whose consistency and discipline make them invaluable. Slavin, in particular, has been praised for his ability to shut down elite forwards without taking penalties, a rare and critical skill. The beauty of the shutdown defenseman is in the details. They aren't the ones scoring on the power play or rushing end-to-end, but they're the ones diving in front of a slap shot, tying up sticks in front of the net, and making the little clears that stop danger before it starts. Fans might not cheer as loudly for those plays, but ask any coach or teammate, those moments win games. In short, the shutdown defenseman is hockey's guardian. They're the steady, dependable presence who ensures chaos doesn't turn into goals. They might not get the glory, but they provide the foundation that every great team is built on. Offensive defenseman. The offensive defenseman is one of hockey's most exciting player types, the blue liner, who doesn't just guard the net, but helps drive the attack. Their role is about much more than staying back and protecting the crease. Offensive defensemen use their skating, vision, and puck skills to create scoring chances, quarterback the power play, and often act like a fourth forward on the ice. What separates offensive defensemen from traditional blue liners is their mindset. While most defensemen are conditioned to think defense first, offensive defensemen look for opportunities to join the rush, carry the puck up ice, or unleash a shot from the point. They read the play quickly, knowing when to pinch in and keep pressure alive, and when to jump into the offense to create an outnumbered attack. Their skating is usually elite, fast enough to recover if caught up ice, and agile enough to escape forecheckers in their own zone. There are different styles within this role. Some offensive defensemen excel as playmakers, using crisp passes to set up teammates and control the flow from the blue line. Others are shooters, with booming slap shots or quick wristers that can find their way through traffic and create rebound chances. The best combine both, making them threats to score or create at any moment. Historically, no one revolutionized this role more than Bobby Orr. Before Orr, defensemen were mostly stay-at-home players, tasked with stopping goals rather than scoring them. Orr changed that forever in the 1960s and 70s, rushing end-to-end, piling up points, and winning 2 scoring titles as a defenseman, something no one has replicated. Paul Coffey followed in the 1980s, using his blazing speed to join Edmonton's dynasty alongside Wayne Gretzky, putting up offensive numbers unheard of for a blue liner. Ray Bourque combined offensive talent with defensive responsibility, making him one of the most complete players ever to play the position. In the modern NHL, offensive defensemen are more valuable than ever. Players like Erik Karlsson dominated the 2010s with skating and vision that made him as dangerous as a forward, winning multiple Norris trophies. Brent Burns brought a mix of size, shooting, and offensive creativity. Today, Cale Makar has taken the role to a new level, blending speed, stick handling, and hockey IQ to control games from the back end. Quinn Hughes and Adam Fox are other prime examples, young defensemen who act as engines of offense for their teams. But with great reward comes great risk. Offensive defensemen can sometimes get caught out of position, leaving their team vulnerable to counterattacks. That's why coaches often pair them with reliable stay-at-home partners, balancing risk and reward. When managed properly, an offensive defenseman can completely transform a team's style, turning defense into instant offense. In short, the offensive defenseman is the game changer from the blue line. They embody the evolution of hockey, where defense isn't just about preventing goals, it's about creating them. From Bobby Orr to Cale Makar, they've proven that sometimes the most dangerous player on the ice isn't a forward, but the defenseman leading the charge. Two-way defenseman. The two-way defenseman is the perfect balance between offense and defense on the blue line. While shutdown defensemen focus almost entirely on stopping goals, and offensive defensemen look to create them, the two-way defenseman does both, and does them well. They're trusted in every situation, even strength, penalty kill, power play, and especially in the final minutes of a close game. If you want one player who can impact all 200 feet of the ice, this is the role. What makes a two-way defenseman so valuable is versatility. They can shut down the other team's top forwards with smart positioning and stick work, but the moment their team gains possession, they can transition the puck quickly and join the rush. They're not afraid to carry the puck out of the zone, make the first pass to start a breakout, or activate offensively when the opportunity is there. Unlike a pure offensive defenseman, who might get caught up ice, the two-way defenseman picks their moments carefully. It's about balance, contributing offensively, without ever sacrificing defensive responsibility. There are different shades of this role. Some two-way defensemen lean slightly more defensive, prioritizing stability, while still adding the occasional offensive spark. Others lean more offensive, putting up points while still being trusted in critical defensive matchups. The very best strike a near-perfect equilibrium, capable of dictating the pace of the game in both directions. Historically, the gold standard for this role has always been Nicklas Lidstrom of the Detroit Red Wings. Nicknamed the perfect human, Lidstrom wasn't the most physical or the flashiest, but he was always in the right place, controlling games with positioning, vision, and precision. He racked up over 1,100 career points, while also winning 4 Stanley Cups and 7 Norris trophies as the NHL's best defenseman. Another legend, Scott Niedermayer, brought a similar balance, combining smooth skating and offense with steady defensive play, helping both New Jersey and Anaheim to championships. Chris Chelios was another example, a warrior who could both shut down opponents and contribute offensively across 3 different decades. The beauty of the two-way defenseman is that they don't need to lead the league in scoring or hits to be considered elite. Their value comes from consistency, adaptability, and reliability. They're the defensemen who make smart plays, shift after shift, who can be trusted with the puck, and who never leave their goalie hung out to dry. In short, the two-way defenseman is the complete package. They defend, they create, they stabilize, and they elevate their team at both ends of the ice. If you're building a championship roster, you don't just want a two-way defenseman, you need one.